Welcome everybody to the last GSQ UQ webinar of the year. I'm just going to allow a minute or so for our audience to file into the virtual room. So those numbers are ticking upwards, and we'll just give everybody a chance to join us before we kick off. Another moment or so. All right, we might start. So thanks everybody for joining us this late in November, and before everyone takes off for their Christmas holidays. This is our last GSQ UQ webinar for the year, and we are finishing with a real big bang. I'm really excited about this session, and so is Rick, because he is joining all the way from Santiago, where it is now 1:30 in the morning. First of all, before we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands that we gather all across Australia today and around the world, indeed. So I am joining you today from Mount Isa, not from Brisbane. So I am on the lands of the Kalkadoon people, but we are joining from everywhere, and I would like to pay my respects to the traditional owners in each of those places that we're joining from today. We have a fantastic lineup. This is women leading exploration. So having been part of the exploration industry for a long time myself before I joined government, this is something that I feel very passionate about, and I'm really glad to see the fantastic cohort of women that that have agreed to join us today. So you can see all of their beautiful faces on the screen. If you have any questions during the session, please use the Q&A and chat buttons at the bottom of your screen, and at the end, if you can stick around, then we will also promote people, anyone who's left, promote them to be a panelist, and you can chat directly with everybody here. So without further ado, we are going to start off with the amazing Jessica Keast, who is the founder and host of the global phenomenon GeoHug. She's also the CEO at CoreSafe and Prospectors. So many of you will know her in a number of those roles, and she's going to talk about humans united with geology. So please take it away, Jess.
Thank you so much. And yes, I just wanted to take a quick moment to acknowledge the beautiful lands that I'm on today. I'm here on the Gadigal of the people of the Aurora Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and future. So I'll just fire this up. But yes, so first up, my palms are very sweaty, and I've been so nervous about giving this talk today. And I must say that it's been a really amusing journey as I formed my thinking about what to even say today. And it's been really interesting to observe just how inadequate I felt to even be having these 15 minutes. Imposter syndrome is very real right here. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels like that sometimes. So I just thought that that was worth touching on to begin with, because I've gone from being very annoyed at Helen for pushing me to do this to then full-blown denial and procrastination, to then actually really thinking about what I have achieved so far and what I hope to in the future. So yes, to start with, I'm Jess, and thank you so much for having me. It's incredible to have a space like today where I get the chance to tell you a little bit about myself and to hear from some other incredible women around the country. So I work for the family's business, Prospectors, and we supply some amazing gear for all you Jews out there, from compasses and picks through to our CoreSafe core trays. And I've had so many amazing adventures in this role. I've been able to travel the globe all on my own, from South Africa to the Philippines, North America to Chile, and all over our amazing homeland here in Australia, just in the hope that someone would buy something from me. And I can't tell you how many conferences I've been to over the last 10 years. But as an outsider, I was never really paying attention to what was going on. And I've been tunnel visioned on business and sales and marketing literature that I honestly didn't understand why this whole industry existed. But I was determined to find a way to be noticed. And then COVID happened. The rush home from PDAC before the borders closed and freaking out about what this might mean for the industry, and most importantly, for my family. It's a natural instinct to freak out when you're a supplier, especially at the beginning of the resources pipeline in the exploration and geology space. It's a cyclical industry and it hurts a lot when you're at the front of that wave. We've been through a lot as a family, from health issues, financial loss. We even had our warehouse in Perth burnt down in an arson attack. But they are all stories for another day. So I get home from Canada and I'm in lockdown and I'm feeling rather desperate. And I see all my friends that I'm always comparing myself to in other industries very quickly doing online webinars and online parties and downloading all the latest social apps. And I was feeling adventurous and a little creative, and I thought I'd throw a one-off webinar. So I get to work, having the time of my life in my track pants in my living room, much to the annoyance of my poor housemate who could no longer enjoy TV. I'm downloading Zoom, and that was a learning curve because who even did video calls before COVID? I was never able to do a sales call that way. But here I am, and I figured out how to make my own website, and I'm learning video editing. And I even paid a designer quite a bit of money to help me with my amazing logo and color scheme before I even had a single speaker lined up. But the nuts and bolts are all starting to come together. And then I felt so sad for the entertainers. Their whole livelihood cut off overnight, yet they bring us so much emotion. And it's good to not be serious all the time. It breaks down barriers and it's good for our health too. They bring us tears, laughter, joy, distraction, even anger. I know there are a few out there that aren't fans of my comedians, and I've even had someone tell me that they would punch one in the face if they saw them. So that was a wild time. But yes, I'm chatting to all the comedy clubs on Instagram, and the comedians are bewildered trying to figure out how to switch to online comedy. But the absolute last thought for me was the content. I thought, oh, I'll just call a couple of customers and see who's keen to give a talk. And it was so hard to get a yes, but I'll never forget Adam McKinnon, Susie Obernick, and Jill Terry that took the plunge to get involved with GeoHug. So here we go. I'm now hosting geology webinars with absolutely no idea what it would turn into. And it was the best. Awkward at parts, for sure. Like, who can remember when I decided that we all needed a quick stretch workout mid-webinar? But it was amazing. The demand was there and I was buzzing. So a couple of weeks passed and I've locked in even more speakers to run another one. And it's all quickly starting to snowball from there. I've got people all over the world asking if I can change the time to their time zone. All the emails for, can you send me the recording? And before I knew it, I'm now running 2 sessions every week to try and cater for everyone. I've now got people tuning in from over 141 countries. The videos are now being used as like training for mining companies, and I've had nearly 1 million impressions on LinkedIn just this year. And the absolute funniest part is that I've had no idea what everyone is talking about. All the amazing GeoHug speakers that have contributed all this incredible knowledge, well, they all send me the words to use for the promotions. During the Q&A, I'm struggling to pronounce the words. The quick scramble on Google for which element that abbreviation stood for. I just can't put into words how much my brain has been absorbing over these last couple of years. And I think it's going to take me quite some time to really unpack everything that I am learning. But running GeoHug has had a profound impact on me, and every single speaker has seriously blown my mind. So today I did want to share a few thoughts and observations as the outsider who very quickly got thrown into the deep end, as well as some of my own realizations about myself, as I've had some really, really big learning moments over the last couple of years. Perhaps this might mostly just be amusing, but with what I found it interesting, perhaps some other outsiders will too. So first up, I'm constantly blown away with how passionate you all are. If the YouTube watch time was just one person, it would mean that this person has watched YouTube recordings for more than 2 years and 15 days, 24/7. You all have a serious thirst for knowledge. Secondly is the requests. You won't believe how varied and diverse the requests are. My main challenge now is that everyone's title is geologist, which really doesn't give away much for me. I never realised how much is involved and how long it takes to go from a discovery to an operating mine. And on that note, I was shocked to learn at how few discoveries actually happen amongst all the explorers out there. I'm having a far bigger appreciation of how challenging and complex this all is. I love that it's often compared to as a roll of the dice. As a fellow optimist, I can see how it gets so addictive. But out of all of the things that I've been learning and all the facts that people have been sharing with me, it is always the simplest ones that really stick. I never knew that it takes an entire small copper mine just to run all the cat videos that are on the internet. And it is now not lost on me that all the resources that are required so that I can host and distribute resource and geology talks. I never realized how much more to humanity than just the products that we use is impacted by resources, from food supply to healthcare, artisanal miners and geopolitics. I'm now finding I'm spending way less time aimlessly scrolling Instagram and much more time trying to educate myself. And I never thought before about what the energy transition really means for the minerals industry and the magnitude of metals that we need. But now that I am starting to understand that, I'd love to learn more about the how. How does it work from being dug out of the ground to then me having a phone or a car? As awareness of the needs and demands increase, I think storytelling in the how and some of the intermediary steps will really help people to understand and to break down some of the barriers that the industry faces. Everyone from all walks of life want to see the planet and humankind flourishing. And I think that the more people that understand how all this stuff works, I think we'll see more acceptance, innovation, and solutions. I still don't understand why oil and gas is so separate to minerals, especially for information, workflows, and technology sharing. And I've never realized how siloed it also is inside the industry, whether it's between disciplines or from exploration to production and onto rehab. The fact that several speakers have wanted to touch on this sort of topic has been really interesting to observe. But some of the things that have had the biggest impact on me is to never underestimate the power of your network and the connections that you make that can help you or for you to help others to succeed. The amount of people that send supportive notes, introduce me to someone that would make an amazing speaker, all of the speakers themselves for taking so much time to share their knowledge, people that want to help me and my family business to succeed, all the people explaining to me what an IOCG or a VMS or an SHMS is, or just general geology 101 lessons. And by the way, when I try to Google SHMS, it comes up as the Swiss Hospitality Management School. But luckily for me, I've got my little black book of experts these days that can help explain it all to me. But I'm starting to realize that I don't need to be the expert to have a voice and to make an impact. I'm slowly starting to learn to stop second guessing myself and to have the confidence that what I'm doing is good and helpful. So this has been my journey so far, and I thank you so much for allowing me to further hone in on my soft but essential skills in communication. But lastly, as outreach grows, channels like GeoHug will continue to be more well known, and people will form opinions about our industry based even on things like our viewing trends. I was really saddened to see that with the more than 50 incredible women that I've had speak, not one of them features in the most popular views in the top 10. Visibility is so important, and so my call to action is that if you are going to be watching any geology recordings anytime soon, to please choose to listen to one of the amazing women, because not only are you going to learn a whole heap, but their visibility really needs to get out there. So to make it easier, I've created a playlist so that we're really easy to find. And yes, happy binging. Thank you so much.
Awesome, Jess. How was that going from host to presenter? You did way better than you.
I was shaking.
You are a natural, and you know, as a viewer and participant in GeoHug, I want to say thank you for everything that you've done for our industry during COVID and then beyond. Like, this isn't going away, so thank you.
Thank you so
Now,
much.
does anybody want to say anything to Jess before we move on, and she will. Are you going to stick around for a little while?
Yeah.
Good. If you want to talk to Jess, then we've got the chat and we've got the Q&A. But I just, thank you.
No problem.
You are awesome.
Thanks.
And I love that you've made a playlist for women in resources. I'm going to be sharing that too.
Hopefully we can get all of these ones up there too.
We will, definitely. We will. So all of these will be recorded and you can see them again later.
Awesome.
All right. I think we might have just lost Rick. Rick Valenta was joining us from Santiago and it was very early in the morning. So he has now gone to bed. But you are left with me and Nick Cooke from the Sustainable Minerals Institute, as well as Evan Marshall, who is our awesome webinar coordinator with GSQ. Right, our next speaker is Niki Spurway, who is going to talk to us about, she's from Rio Tinto Aluminium, and she's going to talk to us about innovation in bauxite exploration. So please take it away, Niki.
Oh, what have I done? Hello, thank you, Helen.
It's coming up. Here it is. All right.
Did that work? Sorry. Jess, that was amazing. Thank you so much for reminding us that we're all human, and I've got the jitters as well. I just hope they don't show like they didn't for you. Look, thanks to GSQ and UQ for hosting these sessions, and thanks for having me today. Just a quick introduction to me. I've been in Rio Tinto Aluminium for the last 7 years, I think is right. And I just wanted to, when Evan approached me to do this talk today, I just thought I'll give you a little insight into what I do every day and hopefully teach you a little bit about bauxite on the way. So I wanted to start with my team, and this is us unfortunately saying goodbye to one of our geologists, giving her a send-off. I guess the thing that we try to do, and the thing that me and my boss, the manager of geology and RTA, tried to instill in the team is this concept of psychological safety. And the point being that when the team feels confident and safe, then we move from being wary of change to bringing new ideas and embracing that change. And Rio Tinto is very keen on doing things better all the time. So we have this sort of continuous improvement plan, and we manage some of those innovations through our transformation initiatives that we have. There's also been a big push on, Rio Tinto loves their 3-letter acronyms and little phrases, and we talk a lot about what's the next gen technology, what's next, what's coming around the corner that's going to help us do our job. And then also looking towards Industry 4.0, big data, AI, that kind of thing. How is that working for us? So I think with the team, we've tried really hard to build a good mix of people, and it's really buzzing at the moment. We're doing really well. So just a little map of where we work. So I don't know if you can see my mouse actually, but on the right-hand side of the map there, you can see the top of Cape York, and our team manages a mining lease which runs nearly 200 kilometres from Aurukun up to the Skardon River, and we have we have a couple of operations, and then we have some project areas as well. So there's a lot of near mine and project style exploration work. And then across the ditch, we have our Gove operations, which we're also responsible for providing ore body knowledge to. In pink here, we've got some exploration plays, which our team are involved in just from a bauxite development opportunities, and then a longer tangent to the Atlantic, CBG in Guinea and MRN in Brazil. So I lead a team that covers a big swathe of different buckets. So we start with target generation, we do exploration, and then we do our resource development. So we have these words which some people will be familiar with: inferred, indicated, and measured. And then we do a grade control style drilling. We work in and amongst our mine operations, and we also have mines closing soon. So we're involved with that option as well. So I wanted to show you this map. It's a LiDAR image across our tenements at Cape York, and you can see the bauxite. The plateaus stand out in the LiDAR. It's not a trick. It seems pretty easy. So why do we innovate in bauxite? I guess the point I want to make here is that in Rio Tinto, at least in the last 5 years, we've changed the way that we sell our bauxite. So we used to just mine enough bauxite to keep our own refineries going in Gladstone, but that's changed recently, and we actually export quite a lot more than we actually use in-house. So we need to know exactly what we're giving our customers, and some of our customers have very specific limits, if you like, on the aluminium, silica, K-silica. Some have very specific demands in terms of different elements as well, such as high iron. So that's a good driver, and it's a good way of getting support from the business to say that we need to have better ore body knowledge, and we need to understand what's going on so we can provide the right products at the right time. We know that the host rocks have a big part to play in the type of bauxite that develops, and it's really hard to learn more about them when we only drill to about 5 meters everywhere. So we know that the geochemical makeup also of bauxite is essential to its value, and through high and low temperature refining, we need to have a really good understanding across all of the values of bauxite. So I know that Rio has a very privileged position here as the holders or custodians of this 3 billion tonne resource at Cape York. And we also have the integrated value chain that is not common in other bauxite mining. So not only do we have the mine, but we have refining and smelting as well. And I would say ore body knowledge is very well supported by the business, and we can show our value to the business, and in turn comes support from them. We also have our standard where we need to be 5 years ahead in grade control and 10 years ahead in measured. That's a really nice way to keep a buffer between us and production. And then Rio Tinto itself includes technical teams that are specifically designed to support next gen and 4.0 ideas and systems. So we have this sort of foundation that is really supportive of innovation. So to make innovation happen, we start with some focusing questions, and these are specific to my deposits. I'm sure you have different reviews and challenges, but these are some questions that we like to start with. So what is the workflow, and can it be optimized? Why is the team doing what they do, and do they know why? And that's been a real game changer in the last couple of years, is just providing that context and purpose. It's really lifted everyone to the same platform to know how we want to get better at things. When does the work happen and can it be extended? I don't think it's unique to Cape York, but we are certainly limited by the weather where we work. And it comes down to also who does the work and can it be done safer? So I think when we sort of work through these questions, we're trying to find a problem. Is there a problem that needs to be solved? And because we don't just want to apply technology because it's there. Our biggest problem at the moment is that we want to get a quick turnaround of our results, and we want to provide the right information at the right stage of development. And like I said before, the Cape York bauxite deposit, it's kind of easy in inverted commas in terms of its extent and architecture, but it's the perfect training ground to apply some of these new techniques and technologies. So if I just work through some of the innovations that we've had since I joined the team, I don't know if anybody is old enough to remember these things. I graduated in 1994, showing my age, from Year Q, and this was my first device that I logged on in the Tanami, and we stopped using them in 1996. And I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that when I got to my team in Rio Tinto in 2015, we were still using these, and I thought I'd never see them again. So we updated that pretty quickly. We're using these Panasonic tough pads now, and this year or last year we started using these barcode scanners. When we've got this beautiful deposit, but it also comes with a lot of legacy issues, right? It's been sampled since 1954 and it's been mined since the 60s. So, you know, trying to turn some of those ideas around have been quite challenging. We are proud of the fact that we now sample our entire drill hole, all that's 5 meters depth. Previously, the waste got thrown away, but we've since understood that waste can be valuable to at least the understanding of our waste. We're using, and we're still using, ground penetrating radar to try and map out the base bauxite. We've revamped our resource modelling methodology, and you know, that's definitely been for the better. What I mean by de-siloing the team is that we were quite a closed book, and we kept our information to ourselves. But now that's changed, and we're happy to share, at least with other teams in Rio. We want that education to be understood by the wider Weipa and Gove support teams. They don't know what geologists do. We kind of generally fly under the radar. So it's nice to be able to support the production teams and other teams on site when they know what we're capable of. So recently, if we just talk through logistics, and a lot of bauxite exploration is logistics. We talked through the tough pads and the barcode scanners already. We've recently put a GPS on the rig. That might seem really simple, but it means that our drillers, who usually finish a hole in under 5 minutes, have to wait and use another sort of piece of small device to collect the GPS coordinate X, Y, and Z of the location of the drill hole and label it. And, you know, it's a big ask, but we've got a good team, and we're getting through it. What it means for us is that we don't need a surveyor after the fact, which means a safer workflow. We're not having a person running around the bush on their own trying to find all the holes that we drilled, and it's also quite a bit cheaper. We've updated our grade control drilling workflow to be more aligned with grade control in other operating mines. So we don't log the holes anymore in grade control. So that means we don't have a geologist on the rig. We just have experienced field assistants that can manage the samples. And there's a lot of samples at 25 centimetres down hole. There's about 1,000 samples a day. We've recently started a drill line management portal, which is an ArcGIS online platform. And I guess I just want to make the point here as well that innovation doesn't necessarily have to be making something from scratch. We have built this portal based on existing technology, and it's been brilliant. We've been able to bring together the heritage and environment and geology teams with their own logins and their own areas where they can approve drill line access. And we can use any buffers that they find, and we can put them into a Guidex system, which is a Trimble-based system that our dozer operators use. So all this, you might think it's maybe not very innovative, but it's been completely game-changing for us in the field. As I said before, we're working further and further away from our mine operations, and we have zero communications. We don't have cell phone coverage. We don't have radio towers. There's really nothing. And both Selfie and Starlink have been really beneficial to us this year, and we'll keep looking. I think we're going to expand our Starlink base now that it's actually functional in Weipa in the last few weeks, and get the rover kits as well for our rig sites. And this picture demonstrates our automatic rod handler carousel. So it's been a massive partnership with Wallace to co-fund the build of this rod carousel. And I know it's not new in terms of RC and diamond drilling, but this rig is housed on a Land Cruiser ute. It's tiny, they're 3-metre rods. And Wallace have engineered this to hold 15 metres worth of rods. And yeah, it's been fantastic for us this year. So yeah, that's our innovations in logistics. If we move on to ore body knowledge, this year we've finally got the green light to do some airborne geophysics. And I'm so excited about this because every project I've ever worked on, we've been able to collect some kind of airborne geophysics, which is quite reasonable when you're talking about gold exploration and things like that. But airborne geophysics for bauxite had some people scratching their heads. We tried the SkyTem system, their shallowest system this year. And to be honest, it wasn't really a game changer. But the traditional airborne geophysics of magnetics and radiometrics have just been fantastic. We're still waiting for the final data to be released. But in terms of magnetics, we're looking at these deep-seated structures to see if our cemented bauxite shapes and locations are being related to those structures and water flow. And we're also looking at, mapping out paleo channels. We're getting some amount of intrusions underneath, which is really interesting to see how that relates to the valley of the bauxite that's forming on top. And the radiometrics, of course, is great for domaining and mapping environmental areas and things like that. We've also moved recently from giant geophysical downhole specific gravity pits, which are really hard to do with the right HSEC rules these days and really expensive. So we're doing downhole geophysics, but we're also getting some calibration blocks built and installed in Weipa so that our guys can calibrate their tools. And then the drill spacing review, it doesn't seem like a lot, but we get, as you saw in our LiDAR with our plateaus, we get really good consistency in the lateral space in the middle of the plateaus. And as we get to the edges, we find the floor really steeply undulating. So we're looking at how the drill hole spacing will change or could change to be closer spaced on the edges than in the middle. But obviously that is going to impact our resource modelling. So that's kind of a work in progress. We're also looking at a downhole sampling interval review. So 25 centimetres is lovely for getting our differentiation downhole. But when our SME, our mining, can only, the minimum our SMU is to 0.5 of a metre, then we have to ask ourselves if we're getting the value out of that. In terms of analysis, I guess we do have a real problem to solve here, and that's this year we've collected more than 200,000 samples from our projects, and doing traditional analysis on those samples just costs a lot and takes forever. So we really want a faster turnaround on our samples, and if we can show a cost saving as well, that's always a good plan. So we've tried the first two things on there, TrueScan and FastGrade, if you've heard of those. They're quite different, but they both give fairly instant results once the models have been made. So TrueScan is like a trailer that you can drag around behind you in the bush and load uncrushed samples into and get a fairly quick turnaround on the assays. And FastGrade is it's a downhole tool that gives you, reads a spectra of it's quite a good match to our sampling regime of 25 centimetres. So that part was good. But we also found that it needed a PQ sized hole, and we normally drill HQ. So it just makes our drilling very slow. So we've pretty much knocked those two on the head for now. I'm sure they work well for other projects and commodities, but at the moment, not well for bauxite. And then we're working through all of our rigs at the moment are fitted with a measure while drilling or geophysics while drilling system, which basically collects all of the metrics off the drill rig. The good thing about that is that it's starting to come back to us as a logging while drilling, and it comes back directly to the driller. So we're asking a lot of our drillers at the moment, but they have another panel on their dashboard that gets fed the base of bauxite. And so we get more consistency and more confidence in our drillers when we don't have a geologist on the rig. We're looking to perhaps turn that into assay while drilling, but that hasn't quite got to that step yet. The other part of our world in analysis is the infrared space and the infrared spectrum. So we have been using near infrared for a little while now to measure kaolinite as a proxy for reactive silica in bauxite. But we're looking at a wider spectrum now and move to FTIR machines. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about that. Right. So I did mention cemented bauxite before, and that's a little picture of what cemented bauxite looks like in some areas. I guess just to close out my talk, I wanted to sort of just mention that all these innovations or ideas are really fun, and they can be quite time consuming and quite costly as well. Not everything's going to work. So I think it's really important to know when to pause or stop or close it out completely. through you know, the routine of budget, scope and schedule, and having your stage gates, I think you can check in that the value proposition is being met or exceeded, or maybe needs to be revisited as the results and project develops. So yeah, I would just say, and I hope that our team continues to keep an open mind for future developments in all of those things: technology, communications, automation, geophysics, geochemistry, and the list goes on and on and on. But yeah, I hope that was a little bit helpful to people listening.
Thanks, Niki. I now know a lot more about bauxite. Having come from a base metals and gold background, I don't actually know that much about bauxite. So I think there's certainly a lot more to it than I had ever imagined. So I really appreciate that. And I love the approach you took about going through the series of innovations in each area. We do have a couple of comments for you. Celeste, Cronin, Stacey is saying hi, and I think the two of you might have worked together before. So she's put some comments in the Q&A, and then Jenny has also put comments in the chat. So Jenny, you can actually put your microphone on and ask live if you like.
Yeah, thanks, Niki. That was really interesting. I don't have much experience in bauxite either. The 25 centimetre sampling really intrigued me. How is that done with an air core rig? I just find that like crazy.
Yeah, we have to train our drillers to wait for the sample. We've got our mast, whatever you call it, marked up so that we know where the samples are. And our measure well drilling's helping us as well to make sure that we're covering off on those things. Every year we have to talk to our drillers and yes, explain that, yeah, 25 centimetres is actually what we want to do. Please don't ream the hole while you're collecting the samples. Just wait, it will come through. Bauxite stands up really well in a drill hole. So yeah, it's manageable, but it is a little bit crazy. There's no splitting. The whole sample gets sent to the to the lab. So that's one less thing to worry about.
Fascinating,
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think drillers are a lot more capable than we give them credit for. And I need to say that because my partner is a driller. Mandana has a question for you. She's saying, thanks for the great presentation. Can she ask if seismic is also playing a role out there?
We have done seismic in the past, like way in the past. What I'm looking at the moment is the passive seismic option, but I'm not sure if it's very different or if it's going to give us very different results to the ground penetrating radar. You like to think of bauxite as that really nice puzzleitic, you know, the photo that I showed at the front, and mostly it is, but quite often it at the base of bauxite, it just sort of transfers into clay. It's a very gradational change sometimes, and so you don't get that nice boundary that you want to see on a seismic or GPR.
Cool. We've also got a comment from Mark Noppe, who's saying, great to hear about the updates and activities. So, and thanks. And I also wanted to say that, Jess, I've received a number of text messages, so they haven't gone through the thing, but there's been a few text messages saying how great your talk was as well. So I'll try and forward some of those on. Okay, thanks, Niki. Our next speaker is Chloe Leclerc. And I just also, before I move on, I just wanted to say that we've got speakers from everywhere today. So I'm sitting in Mount Isa. Rick Valenta was over in Santiago. Niki's in Brisbane. Jess Keast is in Sydney. Evan's in Brisbane, Claudia is in Bendigo, Chloe, you're down in Melbourne, right? Jenny's in Perth, Holly's in Adelaide. So we are coming at you from everywhere. So Chloe, it's your turn now. Chloe's the head of marketing and commercial strategy for FleetSpace Technologies, and she's going to talk about how can space technology revolutionise mineral exploration. Sounds pretty amazing, Chloe.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So, yeah, Chloe Leclerc, head of marketing at FleetSpace Technology. I am not a geologist, but I am an explorer. So at Fleet, actually, exploration has so many meanings. We are explorers on Earth. We are supporting mineral discoveries. But we also are explorers on other planets, and we are explorers with technology on the way we produce, techniques we're using, and the innovation we bring to market. Oops, sorry. So a bit more about Fleet. So who is Fleet? So we are not a mineral company, we are a space company. The company was founded 7 years ago by co-founder Flavia Tatanardini, who couldn't make it today. She is a rocket scientist with experience at the European Space Agency. So at the beginning, the company FleetSpace Technology was created to enable satellite telecommunication, enable a simple access to satellite telecom and connect things, so Internet of Things everywhere. Today, we have launched 7 satellites, so they are already in orbit, and we have 3 more satellites to come early 2023. They will be launched and they will join our constellation to give more connectivity and more power to our constellation. We focus on exploration, and we have an innovative end-to-end mineral exploration service that we deliver today to mining companies. Nice photo of our team. That was, I think, few months ago, because we have now passed 100 employees mark, and we are growing really, really quickly. A better photo of our team here. And I want to talk about our team at Fleet, because for us it's very important. And I like this workshop today because it's about women leading exploration. So I'm sure you will all agree that diversity is key within a company, and our team at Fleet is very various and diverse as well, not just the genders, but also the nationalities. We have more than 30 nationalities at Fleet, so for a team of 100 people, it's impressive. And we have also many backgrounds and profiles. So we are a good mix of space engineers, space fanatics, entrepreneurs, and also a big team of geologists. So it's great to have all these profiles working together to deliver a solution actually that is innovative for this market. And we work toward this common mission that we have written big on our walls in our office. We make spacecraft for explorers of new worlds. So I'll just present you this spacecraft, these satellites we are very proud of. So we started 7 years ago with very tiny satellites, and we kept growing these boxes, these satellites. We moved to what we used to call the shoebox Centauri satellite, and now moving toward the pizza box size, the Alpha satellite. So we're getting bigger, our satellites are getting bigger as we grow our ambitions, as well as our customer base actually. And what it is important, I would say, about that is as much as I love space, satellites are just an enabler. Actually, they just provide a service, they provide a connectivity to an application, to an industry on Earth most of the time. So this is our constellation, but actually what's most important is the application we are focusing on. And the first application we have decided to focus on is mineral exploration, and that's today the focus of the company, supporting exploration on Earth. Why? Because this is today, and everyone will agree here, one of the main challenges we face on Earth is the energy transition. And we know that if we want to meet the net zero priorities, we need quick actions. we need to change the way we explore, and we need to find more minerals more quickly and in a less invasive way as well. So that's why technology is so important. And I can notice many speakers today will speak about innovation and new technology. So the service that we have developed at Fleet, and we call it Exosphere, is actually a combination of 3 technology that at Fleet we master and we own. We have developed that in-house, and we own these 3 blocks that build our Exosphere solution. So the first one is ambient noise tomography. So it all starts on the ground, where we deploy our sensors, or our customers deploy the sensors that we call the geodes. So you can see them on the pictures, all these sensors. So the geode gather data and information. They are a smart seismometer, and they gather passive seismic recordings, and they transmit this data stream direct to our satellite from almost any location on Earth. And that's where actually it's important to have our constellation of satellite is. Wherever your project is, as remote as many mining projects are, the satellites are passing over your area of interest, and we can transmit the data. We are not reliant on any network. We leverage our constellation of satellite. So this array of geodes can generate 3D subsurface seismic velocity models using ambient noise tomography in a matter of days. So then I mentioned about this satellite gathering this information from the geode and sending them back to our platform, where we have artificial intelligence processing, and we analyze the data automatically and then reproduce 3D subsurface mapping. So it's brand new technology, owned and developed by Fleet. Why is it new? I think the first thing is because it provides a quick overview and a quick insights of the area of interest. Actually, more than insights, within 4 days, we can deliver a 3D subsurface map of the area. It is very simple to deploy as well. You can carry the geode, so a small team can deploy these geodes on the ground, and it is also non-invasive. So really deploying a geode is as simple as planting an olive tree. You go there, you have to go there underground, and you just dig and put the geode and leave that geode in place for the time of the analysis. And it's also responsive, because as you have a result in just 4 days, you can start understanding and having an overview of your area of interest, and you can redeploy the geode if need be, if you want to focus on a specific area, or if you want to move your area of interest. So I will play a nice video now to show that tells a bit more about this technology. Maybe it will explain a bit even better than I have done. So I'll push that now. So we are very proud of this service that we are delivering. It's been several years to reach that point, and it actually became fully commercial and launched to market early this year. So in March, we launched it officially to market after several proof of concept. And since March, we already have more than 20 customers who've tested it. So Core Lithium is just an example of them. We have Talon in the US, so it's not just in Australia. We are going global as well. And most of the customers, actually, they want to see the product in action, the service in action. So we start with proof of concept with those customers. They check the data on an area where they have other data source as well, and where they can cross-correlate the information to validate the 3D model we are generating. And now we are already with those customers, with Core Lithium and others that have finalized their proof of concept. We are moving to longer term partnership. Really, the idea is to have these geodes available for our customer all year long to support their exploration project wherever they are. And we are now moving to yearly to multiple years contract. And as I said, we are explorer on Earth, but not only. And our vision really at Fleet is to connect the Earth, Moon, and Mars. So with our constellation of satellites, and it's not only a dream, actually. We are already involved in projects where we could deploy some rovers on Mars, on the Moon, and start mineral exploration actually on other planets. And this is certainly coming sooner than we all think. Thank you very much.
Holy moly. So I'm just going to say, first of all, that was the coolest video. That was awesome.
I'll share with the team.
And second of all, this is what it's all about. Here we are, women leading exploration, and why not lead it off the planet and into space? So that's just so cool on so many levels. I'm not a geophysicist, so if I ask a question, I'm going to make a fool of myself, but and I was thinking of things to ask, but then I thought, no, I'll let a geophysicist ask, because anyway, if anybody wants to jump in and ask a question, but we've got
I'm not a geophysicist either, but yeah, I think enough to understand what it is all about. But we have geophysicists in-house, and that's good as well. Yeah. We can have more technical discussion if we're totally open to that.
We do have a question in the chat. So Mandana would like to know what the vertical resolution is.
So yeah, that would be a question for my geophysicist, but I can get back to her or him. Sorry, didn't catch the name.
Awesome. Okay. Well, hopefully we can do that. Yeah. And I don't know if any of my geophysicists are online. I think I saw Roger in the list of participants. So Roger, jump in the thing if you know what the vertical resolution is, because I know that my team of geophysicists have followed the Fleet technology, and they were the ones that suggested we get you guys to come in and talk as well. So yeah, really appreciate that. Thank you. That woke us all up on a Thursday afternoon. So cool. All right, our next presenter is Holly Cooke, joining us from Adelaide. She's an earth scientist with Oz Minerals, and she's going to talk about connection, the overlooked resource.
Fantastic. Thanks for the intro. I'll see if this screen sharing works. Have you got me?
We have you.
Perfect.
Go for it.
Alrighty. Hey everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for having me on board. I always love listening to these kinds of sessions, so I feel quite humbled to actually be chatting at one. And I'm chatting to you from Ghana Land in Adelaide, South Australia. I always find professional introductions challenging because I'm very early career and I'm not particularly married to job titles. So how's this? I'm Holly. I see the world through an earth science lens, and I spend a lot of time storytelling geology. I'm 22. I work part-time with Oz Minerals. I'm a subject away from my Bachelor of Science Advanced Geology major. But I talk to you today actually not as Holly from Oz Minerals, not as Holly from Uni of Adelaide, just as Holly, the young geoscientist with some thoughts about how we connect people to planet using geoscience. And I want to spend my time with you today sharing a perspective. My talk is really a meander through this perspective, what I'm creating in science media spaces, and why I care about connecting people to planet at all. I hope to convey the essence of my science communication as one grounded in love of nature, in admiration of science, and why the beauty of both of these things is actually only really found when we connect them to real people, when we connect them to real lives. So settle in, bear with me. Bear with me when I say that the geologist's most overlooked resource isn't technical. And I suppose that's actually the hard part for us sometimes. So to scene set the next 15 minutes, I'd like to share my inner perspective on the interactions between human and nature and how geoscience paints this picture for me. And I appreciate this is a bit left field. This isn't a technical talk, and this might not float everyone's boat, and that's totally fine. This is again just how I sort of am approaching my early career. So as geologists, we're trained in the earth. The mechanics of this planet and its history, it's our specialty. We know how to read rocks as relics of worlds now long gone. And so in a poetic and very real sense, I like to think of geoscientists as timekeepers. We hold a delicate balance between 4.5 billion years of Earth and a now where humanity seems to have lost touch with how built by nature we are. From our resources, our water resources, energy resources, our clean air, to resilience with natural disasters like the floods, bushfires, cyclones, we depend on and are bound by Earth. In a tragic sense, for some I'd imagine, our concrete cities and our aluminium case laptops can hold us captive to a lifestyle somewhat devoid of natural and temporal perspective. This is just my childhood coming up, where I grew up on science documentaries and reading science books. But how much richer does experience become when we know the iron in our blood came from supernovas, and that the lands we walk on are physical relics of times that humanity is otherwise too young to know. So really, a geologist's grasp on deep time and our balancing act between now and natural history, I think at least it builds a blissful and shattering perspective on humankind. That's where my head's at. But let's come down a level. Like I said, I'm not here on behalf of Oz or Uni Adelaide. This is just Holly chatting. So obviously our grasp of time is essential to our craft as geologists, and miners really are the beneficiaries of the time-traveling geologist. So if I look at geology through a resource lens, I live in IOCG country, iron oxide copper gold country, and many deposits in South Australia are geologically positioned about 2 billion years ago. And like I said, I work part-time at Oz Minerals, and we mine a beautiful deposit called Carapatina. Carapatina is a chemical glitch of copper gold ore, and it has a billion-year past that fits into humanity's envisioned electrified future. And so Cara sits within the Gawler Craton's 1.5 billion year long history. But the Earth story doesn't stop or start at Carapatina, because the actual ore lies about 500 metres underground. And just to glimpse the brecciated Donington Sweet granites, you actually have to travel through 500 metres of overlying sediments. And these sediments are the same as those found in the Flinders Ranges, if you're familiar with South Australia, beautiful part of the country. And so the Flinders Ranges is a place with it has a very special place in my heart and in the science media I create. So I'm going to awkwardly use this as a segue to tell you how I've been talking to the outside world about geology. So I think it's kind of funny that I opened with a big mining project in South Australia, and I'm going to take you through the story of its cover sequence. I think the cover sequence is much more beautiful. So the overlying sediments of the Carapatina deposit are little wafers of the Wilpena and Umbaratna groups. They are Neoproterozoic sediments that document what I easily think is the most glorious earth pivot in geological history. The Umbaratna group brackets the largest, most severe glaciations ever on Earth, where these low latitude glacial deposits in present day South Australia gave the Sturtian and Maranoan snowball Earths their namesake. While the Wilpena group records Earth's first multicellular life mulling around in shallow, tropical, deglaciated seas. So from snowballs to sea critters, Earth's first critters, that's a marvel. And it feels kind of tragic. It feels like such a lost, wonderful story to view this remarkable Earth history simply as cover, simply as Carrapateena cover. Because really, I look at it as the stratigraphy of ancient life above the lithologies of future metal. And this temporal symbiosis of rocks is totally mind-shattering to me when you stop and think about it. And herein lies sort of the title of this talk. Herein lies the overlooked resource, which is the value of teaching the mysteries of our home planet to others, the value of telling a geoscientific perspective of nature to softly ground others in a sense of place on planet. It's unfortunate there's no JAWT code for connecting people to the Earth history behind the asset. As I began uncovering these geological stories, I couldn't leave them alone. Exploring the geology of the Flinders Ranges just ignited something within me that wasn't quite satiated by studying more or by reading more literature. The stories here they yield the power to change people's perspectives on nature, on themselves, on how we know Earth, on how we live on top of Earth, and how we interact with the planet's natural resources. So really being led by a creative feeling more than anything, I picked up a camera and started filming mountains, filming clouds, filming myself talking about mountains and clouds, filmed my uni friends on fieldwork, and it all started and still comes from a place of pure creative fulfillment and the love of sharing science. The very brief strategic thoughts that I had when I started filming and creating videos were, who's my audience? I thought, okay, well, let's start small. My audience is my peers. And I actually looked at my 17-year-old sister and went, you're actually my audience, mostly young people, because I think young people are our biggest opportunity and our biggest critics. And so obviously that I think we need to start there. What's my distribution platform? I thought, okay, I'll just pop it on social media for now, my own personal socials. And my message, it had to come from the heart. And my bleeding heart has always been about curiosity and even more curiosity. Indulge in it, be led by questions rather than answers. And if you let your scientific wonder guide your travels through nature, you can create a geoscientist out of anyone. So I'll take you through some of the backstories about some of the videos I've made. PowerPoint hates me. I upload the biggest files, but it hasn't got sound, but I thought it would be cool just to run through a couple of them for you. I called it 10 Days of Earth Science. I filmed it while I was in northern Flinders Ranges in Arkaroola on my uni field trip. And honestly, this was just fun. I wanted to share the happiness that I felt on my field trip with other people. And I'm preaching to the converted. Field work when you're a geologist is borderline spiritual. Like, it's just, we all feel home out in the field. And I wanted to not only share the happiness and the excitement of being out and learning with others, I wanted to share what I was learning with others. And I thought a really relaxed, calm, and no strings attached way to do this was to just pick up the camera and record people and actions as I saw them out in the field. And I had done another sort of video like this in the Flinders Ranges beforehand. And like I said, these were going on my socials. This wasn't anything serious. I sort of think that's the secret sauce though. And once I realized that people wanted to see this, like this was sort of filling a niche. I started thinking, how can I be even more strategic about what I put in to these videos, because they're rookie. I taught myself how to edit them. They're a bit rough around the edges, but that's and I'm sure, Jess, even in your experience with marketing, that's sort of what people want to see. People don't want to see polished advertising material. They just want to know what your life is like, what your authentic experiences are. And so in this spirit, I then started making a video. This is called Seafloors and Copper Ores, where I wanted to start getting people thinking about how, well, firstly, how wonderful it is that we can know an ancient sea floor and know it for its copper, but then start popping in the little sort of darts of, okay, well, why do you care about copper if you care about wind turbines, and if you care about EVs, then you care about copper? And that sort of feels a bit finger wagging, but you can sort of seesaw it. You can complement it by saying, if you want to know copper, you can also understand nature and know copper. You can be contributing to this global conversation just by understanding your natural world. And that's a very valid way to go about your life and go about your thinking. So this one sort of led a bit more into my material metal world space while still trying to retain the sentiment of being an earth scientist. And And so I've got my notes up, otherwise I'll just meander into a weird place. And the last video I've got for you, well, I started getting some more and more opportunities, which I'm just so thankful for. I've had really wonderful people in my life to give me experiences. But this other opportunity that's ongoing is helping out in a pretty soft sense, helping out with the Flinders Ranges World Heritage nominations that the Department of Environment and Water are running for the Flinders Ranges. And so previously my audience was young people, and then I was sort of thrust into this world of how do you talk to government about why you find geology beautiful? How do you talk to a general public when you've got no idea what they think of you, of mining, of geology? How do you convey, and equally, how do you appease a technical community? How do you appease a technical community that wants to infill as much detail and science as possible versus a general public that has a 30-second attention span and doesn't really want to hear all the technical details? Little bit of cool science here. I mentioned before glacial deposits in the Flinders Ranges that were a bit of evidence for snowball earth. I'm actually sitting in Tillite right there. You can see a big boulder that's dropped out as sea ice is melting. So this is a very warm part of my heart, this Flinders Ranges stuff. A, it's my favorite place in the universe, and B, it's taught me a lot about how I bridge the gap between a technical landscape or an academic landscape and how you talk to the general public about it. So these videos did the rounds on Instagram and LinkedIn mostly, and they seemed to fill a void that we didn't really know we had. They showed non-geologists the beauty of our craft, and they seemed to scratch an itch in career geologists about why they loved their work in the first place. And I guess these videos brought me some visibility because I found myself being able to partner with some small South Australian initiatives, and this let me take outreach from social media into a place where I could actually meet students and talk to them as real people. And importantly, it wasn't in a classroom. And I say that with a little asterisk because I've spent the last 4 years doing workshops in classrooms. I was a STEM communicator for Uni Adelaide for a while, and then I did some classroom outreach with Nexus National Exploration Undercover School with Richard Lilly. Some of you guys might know him. And those classroom experiences taught me almost, and kids, year nines, you won't get harsher critics than year nines. Those experiences taught me everything I need to know, everything I know so far about talking to young kids, what messages they actually care about. You can see it on their faces, they don't lie. But the magnitude of the facelift that geology needs in the public sphere, I can't do that in 40 minutes in a classroom. And I don't say that to dismiss classroom efforts. I became aware very quickly that if you want to talk to young people, a classroom is a good but narrow way to do it. You need to get on their platforms, get on their level, get on their socials. Like a cultural movement has to also have momentum outside of an educational setting. I call the geology a cultural movement. That's close to my heart. So all of the classroom stuff that I sort of have started moving into these sort of not excursion places, but where else can I get to these young people? And so these are a couple of experiences that I've had recently. On the left-hand side, this was filming a video for a video series for the Commissioner for Young People and Children. I think that's what you call it. But it was just part of a video series about what the future of work looks like. This will come out later, early next year, maybe. And it was an interesting experience because it was all about what does your work look like? And I'm 22 and seriously, I haven't got everything, I've got hardly anything figured out. But I think that honesty is important. So I took the time to try and explain how I got into geology, how I let my passion and my curiosity guide me. And it's also I always think it's worth being honest and saying you have to fall on your bum too. Sometimes you have to fail. And I've never learned more about myself than when I'm sort of rock bottom. I've failed a lot of physics classes in my first year of uni, and it forced me to sit down and go, Holly, I know you wanted to be an astronomer when you were growing up, but is this working? And is this your real curiosity? And it's being honest and saying with especially year 11s and 12s and saying the decisions you make right now aren't cemented. They're not set in stone. You owe it to yourself to sometimes sit back and reevaluate what makes you interested, what sparks your curiosity. And so that was in the South Australian Drill Corps Library. And also in the South Australian Drill Corps Library, only last week, one of my favourite experiences I've had so far was designing and hosting tours for students that were attending what we called a Future Energy Week at the Tonsley Innovation District. And it was I guess I just chew the ear off anyone. I don't really know how I ended up doing this, but what I learned was that these kids were going through tour stops at hydrogen electrolyzers, at solar cars, building lithium-ion batteries, all in the name of this Clean Energy Week. And the Drill Core Library, which was 10 meters away from all of these stops, it was dead silent. There was no talk about metal, minerals, or mining in any of this clean energy conversation. So I politely busted into the room and put metals, mining and minerals on the radar, and was able to talk to nearly 100 kids about why geoscience is front, center and fundamental to any chat about the clean energy transition. And what I found stuck with the kids, just a couple of concepts, was deep time. I know I banged on about deep time in the beginning of this talk, but it's because recently that's what's been resonating. I'm in here, I'm leaning over the Carapatina rocks. So this idea that I'm telling the kids, you're touching 2 billion years of time, like Happy Tuesday. How cool is that? And as we were walking through the storage facility at the back of the library, in that upper photo, I was watching these year 9s upload like Instagram stories of the library. And I can't tell you the pride, because I think that as geologists, we sometimes feel misunderstood, and we feel like perhaps even within our own company, people don't understand what we do, let alone the general public not understanding what we do. And so to watch these guys upload Instagram stories was a very curious moment where I've gone, I don't think anyone's even opened Instagram in this building before, let alone be interested enough in what they're looking at to put on social media. So that's sort of the recent experiences that I've had and that are really forming how I think about storytelling geology. And so I'll finish by sort of preaching a little bit, pardon me, but I have to get this message out. And I've articulated this point in a manner totally inspired by the ethos of where I work. Oz Minerals is all about sort of creating value for different people, for different perspectives. And I've taken that on board with how I'm going to frame this. And I've got my notes here so I don't go off topic. But so often, and understandably so, geologists, we're so enamored by our science, by data, by our technical craft, that we actually forget to bridge connection from people to planet. And this ragged disconnect is evident in social, in technical, in corporate discourse today, where you are all in our little echo chambers and silos. We're feeling the same tension. We have corporate ESG sentiments about social license being harder to attain. And then we have Instagram accounts and school strikes for climate who are really angry at extractive industries for damaging our natural home. And then we have the geologists out collecting rocks, drilling holes, feeling at home in the field, and perhaps feeling a little misunderstood by a society that harshly judges mining. We haven't yet tugged that common thread, and no one can talk to each other about it. Mining companies often conduct outreach by finger wagging and rightly reminding the world of our metal heavy and material intensive lives. Like I said, I've bided my time at 2:30 on a random Tuesday in a classroom with no air conditioning, trying to tell kids this message. And even though this story about the sheer quantity of metals and minerals that the world uses, even though that story is true, it's not resonating and not in its current format. So I guess the question, and it's a challenging one, and I haven't solved it myself, is does this sort of, we should be thanking the mining industry is a pillar of our lives. Is that our strongest message? As a geologist, is that actually our strongest message, especially when we've got a generation of emotional kids who care about the earth, who care about environmentalism, perhaps don't fully understand how these systems fit together? I'll just encourage you to go, is that the most powerful message you can be doing to connect to people with our stories? So how else can we tell our story? How do we bring people on this people and planet journey? And I'd assert that the common thread's been here all along. It's both sides of the same coin. It's connection to Earth, whether it's exploration and mining geologists knowing Earth for her minerals and metals, or whether it's Gen Z who knows an Earth that they think is suffocating under the plume of a century of fossil fuels. Both experiences are valid and legitimate, and building the bridge between the two isn't a technical task, it's a human one. So in a world with deep undercurrents of environmentalism, school strikes for climate, of slow fashion, sustainable social media movements, and in our world of electrification, decarbonisation, and rampant corporate greenwashing, in a world of ragged disconnects between all of these different bubbles, a very powerful force for good is the geologists speaking their truth, yielding our training as a force for storytelling to bridge this connection between people and planet. And as one of many custodians of Earth knowledge, let's actually start sharing our curiosity with other people other industries, new generations, get on social media. I've never shown my face in a slide deck this many times. I'm slightly disgusted by it, but you have to put that aside and get on social media because that's where they are. And that should be me off of my post for now. I've where am I? So I'm still playing with how I actually create science media and what formats I enjoy storytelling in and what kind of storytelling formats work. And I wear my heart on my sleeve. So I'm still figuring this all out. And it's actually difficult to navigate this idea of content creation, and social media doesn't actually come naturally to me. I don't fundamentally enjoy the social media experience, but I've only recently found a way to consolidate the storytelling work in a more cohesive sense than just Instagram posts. So if any of this sentiment has resonated with you, you're welcome to keep up to date with what I'm doing via the GeoCo. It hasn't launched yet. It's not an official thing. This is an idea. But if, like I said, if you want to keep up to date with the videos or see a consolidated platform of what's going on in this science media space, then just follow the QR code and chuck your email in. And that's me done.
Wow. It's so good. So good. I know, claps all around. I've had more text messages from my boss, Holly, saying, can you get her to come and work with us?
Oh dear.
So he's obviously watching. Look, just fantastic. And I'm not sure if you know, but I love storytelling. It's something that actually got me into geology, is the love of stories. So that really, really just resonated so much, and I loved it. So thank you. There's a kindred spirit out there. It's so good.
Not alone.
No, not alone in the world. The earth is a story. It's so great. Look, I think that was fantastic. If anybody has any questions for Holly, jump in. But I think we're all actually just blown away with how good that whole, it was a story, and it's communicating. And look, to be honest, that's what women do well. We communicate. So you are a shining example of that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's not because I feel like I learn 1,000 times things more than I can offer just by being here in a room with you guys. So that's very nice to hear.
Don't leave the room, because you are an important part of that. All right. Next up, we have the amazing Jenny Maguire. She's a senior geologist with Rio Tinto. So we've got two Rio ladies with us today. Jenny is going to talk us through one of the biggest discoveries in Australia in the last few decades, the Winu discovery, sorry. So Jenny, please show us how good it all is.
Okay, all right, I'll just try and share my screen here. Holly, that was really amazing. I think we need more people like you in the industry to tell the stories. Like, I was really impressed by that. Sorry, that's just the wrong screen. How do I get this up? Sorry, just bear with me a second here. There we go. Can everyone see my screen there, or not quite? Is that...
No. Oh, here it comes. It's coming.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
We can see it. Switch. Yep. Very good.
Okay. Yeah. So today I'm going to just be talking to you about Winu, which is a recently discovered copper gold deposit here in Western Australia. So I was very fortunate to be part of the Winu discovery team. And in this very short presentation today, I'm just going to talk about some of the factors that I believe led to the discovery of Winu. So I'm also going to touch on a little bit about the geology and what allowed just a small part of it to be directly detected, although it lies beneath 70 meters of post-mineral cover. Let's move that out of the way there. Okay, so first of all, I just need to make an acknowledgement of country. So today we'll be talking to you about the Winu project. It's located in the Great Sandy Desert in Western Australia on the traditional lands of the Nyangamata people. We also acknowledge the Martu people whose country our Patterson tenure and access overlaps. We pay our respects to their elders past and present, recognising the role we play in the continued stewardship of their country. I thought I'd also best introduce myself a little bit. So can you guys see that? Let's turn that off. There we go. So I'm a geologist. I've been with Rio Tinto Exploration for just over 10 years now. So my main experience is really in iron ore and copper, but I've had short stints into diamonds and coal. My Patterson journey began when, strangely for Rio, I guess, I was seconded into our joint venture partner, Antipa Minerals, to work on the Patterson projects. 2 years working in the Patterson accumulated into drilling the Winu discovery hole in the latter parts of 2017. After that, I actually got a great opportunity and I managed to swap the really hot desert in the Patterson for the cold one. And I went to work in brownfields exploration at Oyu Tolgoi in Mongolia. Try and put my pointer on there. Sorry, so I can point. So in 2020, this little guy arrived and FIFO work for me really slowed down. I now have a predominantly office-based role with the ad hoc field travel, but I have been so fortunate in my career to be surrounded by some really great people who have provided technical guidance and mentorship, particularly during the period of the Patterson. And this is really the only kind of team photo I have of the key players at that time. So I guess on to the exciting bit. So as you can see from this timeline, Winu has really been on the fast track since the first holes were drilled in the latter part of 2017. And I'd like to acknowledge that although this part of the story is where I'm going to focus today, a discovery really isn't made by a single drill hole. There's been a huge amount of work done by this enormous and varied team that you can see here to deliver a maiden resource in the latter parts of 2020 and an indicated resource earlier this year. The team have received international recognition with the PDAC 2022 Thayer Lindsay Award. And just previously to that, we won the AMEC 2020 Prospector Award here in Western Australia. So the Winu story really commenced back in 2015 with the realization that Australia in particular was becoming very brownfields focused. And this was in part actually driven by the 2008 financial crisis and also some business needs, but also a growing impression that Australia in particular was becoming quite a mature exploration terrain. So the challenge for us in RTX was to reinvigorate our focus on greenfields exploration and actually try and crack the code on exploring through post-mineral cover. RTX went on a mission to increase its focus on greenfields exploration. And in 2015, for the first time in 8 years, Rio Tinto spoke at the Diggers and Dealers Mining Conference in Kalgoorlie. It's called for better collaboration in exploration. One outcome of this was our partnership with Antipa Minerals in the Patterson. So in 2015, Antipa Minerals invited Rio Tinto to collaborate on the Citadel JV in the search for gold and copper in the Patterson. We'd already been looking at prospects around the Patterson, particularly south of Nifty, but we hadn't really seen much potential for a RTX size ore body. The Antipa project was of interest and the deal was struck in October 2015. Importantly, that deal enabled both parties to explore for opportunities outside of the joint venture tenements. In addition to the Antipa targets, the team saw potential for copper opportunities under the shallow cover in the broader belt, based mainly on experience in Isa and Zambia. Okay, so the Citadel project and Winu are located in the Great Sandy Desert of Western Australia, and it's just 300 kilometres due east of the port town of Port Hedland. It takes about 6 hours to access by light vehicle, and that's from the nearest airport in Port Hedland. So if we zoom into the Patterson province in a bit more detail, where Winu is located, you can see it's located here on the eastern edge of the Barnacardi Basin, within the Yanina supergroup. This is a group of northwest trending belt of metamorphosed Proterozoic sediments and igneous rocks. The province is also host to the Telfer Gold Copper Deposit, Kintyre Uranium, and the Nifty Copper Deposit. So if we look at the Patterson province in a little bit more detail, and this is our RTX summary geology map of the region, the Yanina supergroup sediments were deposited in the later Proterozoic, and this was followed by 2 orogenic events. The latter of these events coincided with the intrusion of these magnetic and non-magnetic granites, which you can see distinguished on this section, which runs through here. It was around this time that the Tier 1 Telfer Gold Copper deposit formed, And the other important deposit in the region from our targeting perspective, but much older, is a nifty copper deposit here. Another one that I want to point your eye to is the 17-mile hill prospect, which is lesser known and related to the same mineralization history. Winu lies within the northern part of the origin and is actually completely concealed by the Permian glacial sediments and tertiary sands. Both Telfer and Nifty lie in the outcropping areas of the origin, and that line sort of starts here where you start getting deeper sediments to the north. And really up until the early 90s, exploration in this northern undercover part of the basin was restricted to seismic surveys for oil and gas exploration and hadn't really seen much mineral exploration. From the early 90s, focused exploration programs by BHP and later Antipa Minerals discovered Magnum and just to the northeast, the Calibre copper gold deposits. RTX had identified the Patterson as an underexplored prime terrain. Telfer and Nifty were the only deposits and still are the only deposits currently in operations. And they each have quite a different geological character and are actually quite unique on a global perspective. So it was really the permissibility of this terrain to host a copper deposit and the limited amount of work done due to the cover sequence and inaccessibility that led to RTX highlighting the Patterson as one to watch, and ultimately why we entered the Citadel JV. So it's all well and good looking at all the basement interpretation maps, but why had this area, especially the northern parts, been so overlooked in terms of exploration? Well, I believe one of the reasons is one of the lesser known mineralization models at Telfer and Nifty, but one of the more obvious ones as well is that we're in the middle of the Great Sandy Desert here. Getting around in this area is really tricky due to these strike extensive northwest-southeast trending sand dunes, and it's certainly not an easy area to conduct exploration. And the difficulty of access also impacts the financial costs. And that starter slide, introduction slide that I showed you there is actually looking across these dunes here. Some of these dunes are 30 meters high. So in addition to the obvious basement concealment, the ease of access has encumbered this part of Australia, and it has seen very little on-ground exploration, as can be seen in this map here. The only previous drilling is by BHP, which got extremely close to Winu, and they just stopped 2 kilometers short on this line here. There seems to be no indication of the mineralizing system nearby at Winu. And in fact, we believe that the alteration system of the Winu style ore body is so tight that really, unless you drill on top of it, you may not know it was there at all. Obviously now we have a great orientation site to challenge that concept, but it certainly adds to the challenge of exploring undercover in the Patterson project in Patterson province. So separate to the JV work, which is off to the east here, we wanted to complete our own assessment of the ground for copper opportunities, but how are RTX going to tackle the cover problem? So really, it's quite simple. We did an independent review of data and basement interpretation. In early 2016, Hilke Dalstra and I undertook an independent review of the region, and we collated years of historical drilling activity and geophysical data to compile our own basement interpretation. Using Hilke's fantastic structural geology expertise, and by documenting key features of the known prospects in the region, we identified multiple areas of interest. And this map here shows the result of that basement interpretation completed in early 2016. So we applied for the free ground over our area of interest, which was to the west of the Citadel JV, and at the time that was called the Folly North area of interest. This was further refined when the map was completed into a series of targets that at that time were called the Matambo group, which is in basically a series of magnetic anomalies around a non-magnetic granite. With the non-magnetic granite, which lay in the mid, we interpreted lay in the middle here, we saw a similarity with Telfer and a potential source of hydrothermal fluids. Around the granite, there's a series of these magnetic anomalies. We'd identified in the region that a lot of the copper deposits were associated with magnetic anomalies, and we're drawing similarities from 17 Mile Hill and Hilke's experience also at a deposit Melanjakan in India. The granites themselves and the magnetic features lay on a major structural lineament, and we recognize the importance of these faults as potential conduits to hydrothermal fluids in sediment-hosted deposits across the world. It was really just as simple as that, and that was how the initial group of targets at Winu were identified. And this one here is actually Winu. So fast forwarding a little bit now, I haven't got time to go through every part of this story, but 2017 was really seen as our last attempt in the Patterson. We had not seen much in terms of positive results in the 2 years we'd been there, and time there was really running short. We had not completed any work on our own targets, and money for this was just becoming increasingly difficult to justify. We actually got some money in 2017 to progress the Citadel JV in order to infill the remaining parts of joint venture tenure with airborne EM. The survey method had been successful in direct detection of magnum and was a way to screen the tenements for similar style ore bodies which may be lying underneath the Permian cover. It was actually Stu, our commercial manager, who suggested that since we had the system out there, why not just flow our own targets to the west of the tenements? So we flew a very small survey over our Matambo set of targets and some other targets to the north in July 2017. Mike Enright was in the field with the survey team at the time and identified a strong late time conductor. It was a clear drill target. It was potentially associated with base metals. It was oblique to stratigraphy and it had scale. There was a significant amount of line kilometres captured within RTX that year across Australasia, and Winu actually became known as the Wonga Bump. Word within RTX quickly got out, and we were told that we had to drill the target that year. Bearing in mind now, it's already in August, and the RTX tenements had not yet gone to grant, and we actually had no money yet for drilling the targets. That didn't come until October. There's been so much pondering within the RTX team since we drilled Winu that if we hadn't got the rig to it that year, would we have left it for someone else and we wouldn't have drilled it at all. So in exploration, it's really not just about geologists and geophysicists. We've got a huge team of support staff too. The RTX communities team have done a really fantastic job in the Patterson, especially Tori, who you see here enjoying a helicopter trip on the heritage survey that was completed in late 2017. We had been in the Patterson region with both the Nyangamatu and Matu traditional owner groups for some years. That positive and ongoing relationship with the groups and their support enabled land access, including agreements, heritage surveys, and target tested, to be completed in expedited timeframes. The Winu deposit itself lies on Nyangamatu country, and in early 2018, post the discovery holes, we asked the Nyangamatu people if they could please provide a name for the project. The elders gave us the Nyangamatu name Winu, which is the name of a soak in the area and actually means thirsty, which is a very apt name considering where Winu is located. It was our last effort in the region, and the partnership we also had with Antipa allowed us to complete the heritage surveys and eventually drill test Winu, all by using their Magnum camp that they had already set up. So here's the glory moment. So the rig got to Winu after completing the JVG drilling at the very beginning of December in 2017. We intersected basement on the second day of drilling, and myself at the rig, noticing the RC chip piles had a greenish tinge to them, I quickly washed them off. And this is a photo I took that day. I saw they were full of secondary copper. Doing a quick scan of the piles that were on the ground, I understood that this hole was potentially really significant. There were so many gaps in the tenements around us, and I knew that we had to capture more ground. I stayed at the rig till the early evening, getting the XRF data, these obligatory goofy photos and some manager photos of the chips. And I called my manager Mawson when I got back to camp that night. I sent him this image here that you can see of these copper secondaries and a snapshot of one of the portable XRF results from the chalcocite secondaries. He cancelled his trip to our projects in PNG and arrived on site the next day. In terms of the geology, at the time, I really had no idea what I was looking at. There was lots of K-feldspar alteration, there was significant veining, lots of sulfides, there was sericite all through the sediments. And really, it was quite different to what I'd seen across the 2 years that we'd been in the Patterson. The portable XRF readings I took from that hole indicated that we had a very near copper ogwe, which we call 100 meters at % copper. And it had pathfinders such as bismuth and tungsten that indicated that there might also be some gold. The teams in Brisbane and Perth worked through the night and compiled credit cards to ensure that we got as much free ground and tenement as we could across the Patterson. And thanks to Mawson's arrival the next day, we had such a good party in the desert. We drilled the second hole to 216 meters. Unfortunately, we lost both holes in mineralization due to the excessive water in the holes. The second hole was still mineralized, but not as good. But it was definitely enough to justify coming back another year. So as I mentioned earlier, I left the Patterson at the end of 2017, and I moved on to Oyu Tolgoi. So much of the images and the information I'm going to show now is from the teams that I've put together, from the teams that work there and that they've put together and helped me through. I'd especially like to thank Adam, Inna and Hilke, who really helped with putting the next few slides together. So mineralization at Winu is hosted in metamorphosed sandstones, siltstones and lesser mafic rocks. And there are two main styles of hypogene mineralization. We've got a sulfide breccia and some quartz vein hosted mineralization. Top left is an example of the mineralization we see in the quartz veins, and these can be host to scheelite and bismuthenite. The bismuth minerals are commonly associated with gold, and the scheelite is an indicator of a magmatic origin for the deposit. The spectacular quartz, chalcopyrite, pyrite breccia is what allowed Winu to be directly detected, although it sits under 70 meters of post-mineral cover. You can see now why that EM response was so strong. The breccias themselves, as you can see in this picture, often contain rounded quartz vein fragments, which are enclosed in the sulfide matrix, which is indicative of some sort of hydrothermal milling. We haven't observed the breccia zones being cut by the quartz veins, indicating the breccia is relatively late in the genesis of the deposit. And I'm not sure whether it's also necessary for a deposit in that region. So the EM response itself is not always needed to find a deposit in the Patterson. In the bottom right is what a typical mineralized intercept looks like. There are multiple overlapping vein generations, and the wall rock alteration assemblages are very much variable and dependent on the host ecologies. So it can vary along one vein from K feldspar to biotite to sericite. The Winu deposit itself is overlain by 50 meters of Permian glacial sediments, which are generally deeply weathered. Post-Permian weathering affects the very top of the Winu deposit, and we've resulted in supergene upgrading of the mineralization to depths of 340 meters, but more commonly around 100 meters. 3 distinct supergene alteration zones are recognized. We've got an upper leach cap with abundant iron oxides and kaolinite alteration, followed by the very beautiful copper oxide zone with bright green copper secondaries. We have a middle strongly enriched zone, which is dominated by Stelian suited chalcocite, which is commonly referred to as the potting mix on site. And we have the odd areas of native copper. We have a lower weakly enriched zone where you get suited chalcocite coatings on pyrite and chalcopyrite. So as I said earlier, discoveries are really not made by a single drill hole. It's taken a huge amount of work for the team to understand what we know about Winu today and to get the indicated resource that they've got out earlier this year. So mineralization at Winu developed during an intrusive deformation and mineralization event in the Patterson orogeny. It's not so different to Telfer in that we believe it is related to an underlying source granite, which we have not yet seen in drill core. But in some ways it is quite different to Telfer. It's copper rich and the host rocks are much more uniform. The majority of mineralization is not within reefs like at Telfer, but within northerly trending on echelon veins and breccias, which are discordant to bedding. However, we are further learning that there is a more gold rich part of the ore body in the southeast, which trends towards our other discovery, Nagapara, which I really haven't had time to discuss today. There's a well-developed supergene chalcocite blanket overlying Winu. Again, this is so different to our prospects in the east of the province, which have no weathering profile above the Proterozoic rocks. Winu mineralization to date has been intersected over a strike length of more than 2 kilometers, and the low-grade mineralized intercept vein system, has a width of around 600 meters. The deepest intersections to date are 750 meters below the surface, and it's actually still open in most directions. Hopefully it's not the last discovery hole I drill, but for me, that period where we're all working together in really challenging conditions, the teamwork, collaboration, and the enthusiasm we all had to get it done, and then the, I guess, the elation of seeing the results makes it a really difficult moment to beat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I think that's the moment that all exploration geologists would dream of participating in. I think hard to beat that moment, like you say. So what would you, if you were going to do that again, what would you do differently? Or
nothing, because we got there.
you did get there, I know, but you know, like exploration of the blind alleys and chasing your tail, and
I think
success.
I mean, you always second guess yourself, I think, when you're trying to generate targets and you have an immense amount of doubt, but I think at the end of the day the real truth teller is the drill rig, and just be confident in your results and sort of, I guess, go with your gut with your targets. Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, you should come and explore undercover over in Queensland. You know, find
got its challenges, hey. Yeah, I'm not sure whether we cracked the code yet, but we are trying.
I don't know if there is a particular code, is there?
No.
Yeah. And those sand dunes look spectacular as well.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Just in terms of landforms, and stunning.
Yeah, it is a stunning area of the world. No, thank you for having me here today.
Thank you for sharing the story. So cool. And thank you for being, you know, one of our leading women in exploration, actually doing it, being the one on the rig finding that deposit. So just so cool. All right, our next speaker is Claudia Bowman. Claudia is joining us from Agnico Eagle down in Bendigo, and she is actually the winner of the Minerals, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, the winner of the Mineral Council of Australia Young Explorer of the Year Award for Victoria. Is that right, Claudia?
Young Women in Exploration or in Resources. So you had it pretty close.
Just whatever it is, pretty damn cool. So I'm looking forward to your talk. So
excellent.
Please let us know what you have to say.
Excellent. All right, I'll just share my screen. I've got to press share first. So hopefully you can see that. I'll just see if I have my presenter. Yeah, I don't know if I've got my presenter screen. I just want to have my little laser pointer. Sorry, guys.
We're only seeing the PowerPoint at the moment rather than.
Maybe I have to press the button. There we go. All right, excellent. So you can see my screen now. Lovely.
We can,
Cool. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Claudia Bowman. I work for Agnico Eagle, and I've been working there for 5 years. And I just wanted to say thanks to all of the awesome talks that have been so far. I've never been so compelled to post something on Instagram and watch 2 years worth of GeoHug talks and also make a discovery for myself. So it's been fantastic to hear from all of you, and please keep doing the fantastic work that you've been doing so far. I'm from Agnico Eagle. I just wanted to say thank you to the traditional owners of the land. So I'm on Dja Wurrung land at the moment, and I just wanted to acknowledge traditional owners past, present and emerging. I've got a pleasant and long cautionary statement, as does everyone else, that you can read at your own leisure. And I'll just talk a little bit about the company to begin with. So Agnico Eagle is one of the 3rd biggest gold producers in the world. It's got 12 operations, and I work in humble little Australia, off to the bottom right there, at the Fosterville gold deposit. So I've been here for 5 years, but But I started off at Monash University. I studied geoscience and the Spanish language because I really liked the idea of traveling to Latin America and remote exotic countries to see this beautiful planet that we live on. So yeah, I studied those, and I was flipping pancakes at the pancake parlor in Melbourne when a student geologist position came up at Fosterville Gold Mine, and they were happy to take me on, which I was really lucky about. So while I was studying my honours thesis, I logged core, and that paid my rent and for me to eat my food. And at the end of my degree, I was given a job as a graduate geologist. So that was sort of like my formative years. I started off in the resource definition drilling team, understanding why we drill out a deposit. I then worked underground for a year and a bit at what is currently has been one of the highest grade gold producers in the world. So that map that you see on the screen is one of the ones that I drew myself, and it was fantastic seeing the ore body in a 3D context, because there's so many different gold precipitation methods. I'm never going to see a nugget as big in my life ever again, I don't think, because the average head grade is sitting at about 28 point something grams per ton. So it's really quite high. And so now I've actually gone to the opposite end of the spectrum, where I work as an exploration geologist. So I go and pick up rocks and hope for something, and most of the time I put them back down, not having seen anything, but Victoria has a great potential. So Bendigo, a little bit of history about it. I'm sure most of you have heard that Bendigo was a massive gold production region in the 1850s. It has produced over 77.3 million ounces over the years, and they believe that there's probably the same amount left waiting in the ground. So we have exploration licenses surrounding Fosterville Gold Mine, totaling 1,082 square meters. And that certainly keeps us occupied. So I'm just going to talk a little bit to why we're exploring in Victoria and why it's such a good region for gold prospectivity. So you can see here on the screen, we've got the Bendigo zone. So Fosterville here is circled in blue, and you can see it's located within the Bendigo zone. So Victoria is split into zones based on fault blocks, and the Bendigo zone is located between the Heathcote Fault and the Moysten Fault. And it also has two different events of mineralization. So you can see here we've got green blobs and orange blobs, and these events, these mineralization events reflect periods of deformation. So the host rock is an Ordovician turbidite, and these have been compressed over the years into anticline and syncline fault pairs, and they've been deformed at 440 million years ago and 380 million years ago. So you can see here, Fosterville actually is in a zone where both events of deformation and mineralization overlap. And that has worked out in the favour of Fosterville. We've also got a couple of dashed lines here. So the Geological Survey of Victoria, otherwise known as the GSV, did some seismic transects. So we can actually see an interpretation of what's underneath the surface of Victoria. So you can see here we've got the two bounding faults, the Heathcote and the Moysten. And probably what's important about this slide to note is the Cambrian mafic volcanics, because they are theorized. One of the interpretations is that as these rocks have been metamorphosed, they have caused fluids to disperse from those volcanics, and they're flowing up through the western dipping Listric faults in the area. So we can see here we've got these green stars, and the red square is Fosterville, and the green square is the green stars are gold fields, Bendigo, Malden, Tarnagulla, and all of these are based in the hanging wall of these Listric faults. So the Geological Survey of Victoria also have done some work on this, and their interpretation is that for the most part, fluids flow from deep under the earth. They will flow up these faults, but once they get to where the faults steepen at the surface, the permeability really closes up. And so what these fluids often will do is permeate through secondary faults, through and up to the surface. And that's what we see at Fosterville. So I'm hopefully building a picture for you guys. We've got really nice Ordovician turbidites that are folded. We've got some west dipping faulting that occurred during the first event of 440 million years. And then we've got a really nice Swan deposit that occurred at 380 million years that was caused by reactivation of some of these west dipping faults. So we've tied in both events, and they're both important in terms of gold mineralization. So the type of rocks we see, we've got sandstones and shales. The sandstones deform brittly, and so we often get a stockworking, event with pyrite and arsenopyrite mineralization. And that's sort of more of our Benambran style. We get them in both, but for the most part, well, yeah, anyway, I'm not going to keep on going on that line, but these usually grade, I actually said to some of my co-workers earlier that these were low grade, and then proceeded to say that they actually rated at 20 to 30 grams. So that's my version of low grade. And that's because the rocks that we see in the Swan deposit, the highest I've seen is 14,000 grams per ton, but they definitely can range higher, up to 30,000 grams per ton. So as you can see, this is why I'm not sure I'm ever going to see grades like this ever again. It's incredibly high and amazing to see underground in the flesh. So if you ever have a chance to visit Fosterville, please do. It's really cool. So how that ties into the exploration that we've been doing. We obviously have developed this model, and that model has been helped along by a research project called FROGS, which was Fosterville Research in Orogenic Gold Systems. This was funded by the company 2 years ago to have $2 million per year to answer some of the questions like, why is there so much gold? And how did it get there? And what are the structures involved? And one of the things that came out of this study was that obviously we have our two different events at 440 and 380 million years, but we actually identified that the Swan is on a slightly different stress regime. Instead of being an east-west compression regime, it's more trending or striking towards 340 degrees, the north-northwest. And associated with the Swan are some really nice cleavage planes that are visible in our sandstones. So we had some thin section work done, and we can see really nicely we've got our first cleavage, which is our axial planar cleavage that has been deformed by our secondary event. And this is also associated with our really nice acicular arsenopyrite grains that hold a lot of grade. So taking this into consideration, we've obviously got some tenements that we're exploring on. So we've got EL6502, EL6503, and EL6504. And this here is the mine lease in the pink, where Fosterville Gold Mine is. And you can see here the Reedsdale fault, which is one of the west dipping listric faults that I was speaking about before. And then we've got a series of smaller faults that are splaying off this major regional fault that are directly resulting in our gold mine being there. So we're doing a huge amount of exploration to try and target some of these secondary structures in our rocks. We're doing field mapping, we've got soil sampling, we have been doing a series of airborne surveys such as airborne gravity gradiometry, magnetics and radiometrics, electromagnetics, and we've also got past data from previous surveys as well. And this year, most recently, we've been doing air core drilling and diamond drilling and doing downhole wireline of those, of the drill holes that we've been drilling. Probably the key thing I want to point out on this is that like other people, as the previous talk just spoke about, we struggle with cover. So this tenement up here, EL6502, the blue part is where there's no cover. It's Ordovician turbidites at surface. And yellow is Murray Basin sediments. So they are a challenge to face. And down the bottom here as well, we've got another two types of cover. We've got Permian glacial tills and newer volcanics that cover that area. So I remember being in a training course with Scott Halley, and he said, unless you're Canadian, don't ever bother trying to understand what till is saying. So obviously that's a challenge, but he also said there's no such thing as problems, there's only solutions. So who knows, maybe we can find something. Obviously the cover also represents great potential because there's a huge amount of ground that has not been touched by miners in the 1850s that, you know, picked up rocks over the years. So these are just some of the images of the cover that we experience. We've got erratics, diamictites that are covering the surface, and we've also got the Murray Basin sediments, which can range between 10 to 100 meters deep in the area that we're exploring. And they also contain layers such as carbon-rich lignites that can, you know, block your geochemical signature. So challenges there. And I have certainly figured out these challenges by working on the air core drill rig and drilling through those rocks. You can see here, it's quite misty, unlike in the desert where we've been working. It's been getting out to, it's frosty when you get in the morning, and I've been wearing 5 layers of clothing, and it's also been incredibly wet. So this year has been a bit of a struggle because if you try and park a 12-ton air core rig on a muddy paddock, it sinks and then you can't get it out. So we've had to have a bit of a left turn in our plans of drilling this year, but obviously we're still trying. Some other challenges that we face are the large amount of stakeholders. Obviously that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's quite a lot of landholders in Victoria, unlike in the desert. So that is something that we have to contend with. If you want to do a soil sampling survey, you might have to contend with 200 landholders to do compensation agreements with every single one. So that's a challenge. And also, I've just talked about this very nice Swan model, but is our model to model approach, is our approach to model driven. There's a huge amount of regional variation in the geology, so just keeping that in mind. So some of the technological innovations that we've been working with, one of the other things that the Frogs team worked with is they took 50,000 measurements with the TerraSpec Halo. And they determined that some of our major faults, like the Fosterville, the Thunderbird, the Bennu, some of our major faults actually had spectral variations that were identifiable in the data. And so essentially, this is Wes Edgar, our chief geologist's favourite slide. He likes to show that we've got 3 drill holes here that in 2014 they drilled, and they came within 25 meters of the Swan. If they had have used the halo to take this data, they potentially would have seen that there was a dropping in the signal here that indicated that there was an alteration halo of something really big nearby. So we have been trying to use this as a vector for our exploration. And I would like to say that we've actually been successful in the case of drilling drill holes. If you're using this at the end of your drill hole and you see a really nice spectral indication that there might be something there, you can continue drilling. When there's no visuals, it actually has helped us intersect grade. So that's really exciting. So yeah, this is sort of just the learnings that we've had. We've done a textural and vein analysis that has then gone into the way we log, the way we capture data, which is obviously quite important. We've started to use the TerraSpec Halo as an end-of-hole vectoring tool, and we've been using the Leapfrog to model our stratigraphy in the area. Combined with Imago to help us better visualize the data, we've been trying to create regional scale models to actually, better target and hopefully find something. So What's next for us? On the 29th of October 2021, we were awarded 3 moratorium blocks of land, which would effectively double our exploration space. So that's exciting. Obviously, hopefully we can actually get on the land eventually. We're still going through government procedures to actually get there, but it's the three blocks in red that are in addition to our 3 blue exploration tenements. So we also have exploration tenements up in the Northern Territory, which I've gone out and helped with this year. And potentially there's more work for me to do there next year. So I might be flying up to the sandy desert to get nice and toasty up there. And yeah, that's kind of the exploration that we've been doing. Obviously, I can't necessarily say that I've found a Winu or a really big ore body, but I'm only 1.5 years into my exploration career. So I'm going to say that all of my learnings are my successes. So yeah. Yeah, in summary, obviously there's high growth potential. There's lots of potential for gold around. We've got heaps of data. It's just using it to the best of our abilities to try and find something. And this rock here is one of the ones that I pulled out from underground myself. It was a really nice puggy fault, and I took it up to the surface and put it into the shoe washing box and pulled off all the dirt, and it had a really nice layer of gold underneath. And it's still sitting in the safe today. So that is what I'm hoping for. We will see if I ever find it. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Helen.
No worries. Thanks for coming and sharing that. I love the saying, all of your learnings are your successes. I think we all should carry that with us everywhere we go. Yeah. Because if we're not learning, then what are we doing wrong?
Absolutely.
And, you know, 20 grams is your low grade. All right.
It's a bit skewed, my idea of what low grade is. I can definitely tell you that.
My first job in industry was up at a tiny little gold mine in the Pilbara, where the high grade was 2 grams.
Yes. So. Hey, that's still exciting. You've still got an ore body. It's economic, and you can use that. So yes, I'm going backwards. I've started off at really high grades, and I've reverted back to quite low grades. So, yeah.
Oh no, so cool. So cool. Oh, does anybody have any questions for Claudia? The story of, you know, Australia's pretty much Australia's highest grade gold deposit there. It's and one of Claudia's bosses, Jay Clopper, used to be my boss at Lady Annie in Mount Isa. So there's a little bit of shared history there, and he's trying to claim responsibility for both of us as well.
Don't blame him.
Well, I think it's fair. Thank you so much, Claudia. That was really, really good, and nice to finally meet you as well.
Yes, meet you as well. Yeah, lovely to meet you. I'll stop sharing now that I've figured out how to. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Our next and final presenter for the day is Jessie Mack, who's the exploration supervisor for BHP. She's been in training, so she wasn't here from the start, but she's joined us now, which is fantastic. So thanks so much, Jessie, for making time in your late afternoon to join. She's going to talk to us about data collection, from data collection to data interpretation, a field geologist's perspective. And something that, you know, we all deal with data. That's all basically what it is. So can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Helen. I'll just share my screen. Ooh. Bear with me a second. It's the first time I've tried to share from my iPad, so
it's tricky. We're all one up on you because we had a practice session while you were in your training session. So
can anybody see my presentation?
No, but in Zoom there's a second, you have to click the second button to say, it's like a 2-step process to share.
Mm.
In the meantime, Claudia, maybe we can put you back on the spot.
Sure.
And talk a little bit about the sorts of geophysics. I can see it coming through now, Jessie. The sorts of geophysics that you can use to see through things like till, and you've got so many different types of cover that you're trying to work through down there.
So definitely we've been using the airborne electromagnetics to try and see. It's sort of like an integrated approach, right? So we've got airborne electromagnetics that are telling us the depth of cover, and then you can integrate that with your magnetics and your gravity. The gravity has a slightly better success of telling us that there's something there, but for the most part, you still need to test with drilling, obviously. And the magnetics mainly just highlights the paleomagnetic channels in the area, and there were some ideas that some of the sandstones could potentially hold magnetic, as part of the sediment, so you could potentially tell where the anticline syncline fold hinges are, which is really important in our targeting strategy. And also we have dikes that sometimes can be magnetic, so they also have a tendency to plunge through anticline fold hinges. So it's really an integration of all of the data sets. I can't say that one or the other has necessarily worked better. For example, magnetics for the volcanic sediments pulls out beautifully where the volcanics are, but it doesn't actually tell you what's underneath. So it's still, they have applicabilities depending on where you're looking. So yeah.
Cool.
Hopefully that's
thanks. All right. Well, I think Jessie now organised. I can see her. I can also see two of myself, which is disturbing. But Jessie, take it away.
Awesome. All right. Hopefully that's coming through clearly. I guess, as Helen mentioned, the topic of my talk today is from data collection to data interpretation, a field geologist perspective. So probably a little bit different to some of the other talks, but we'll see how it goes. But firstly, who am I? I guess I'm Jessie Mack. I studied at UQ. I'm a UQ grad. I've been an exploration geologist for the past 7 or 8 years. I spent most of my time over in the Pilbara working in brownfield iron ore exploration. And last year I spent a bit of time working in greenfield copper exploration around the Mount Isa region. And recently I joined BHP Coal as an exploration supervisor. So taking a bit of a sideways step from a technical focused role into a more operational focused role. For those that know me well or who have worked with me quite a bit in the past, I guess they would know that I love wildflowers, and the Pilbara is an amazing place all the year, but come July, August, it just changes colour, and there's so many different wildflowers up there. It really is spectacular. And I can't go past a good sunrise or sunset, especially out in the bush. All right, I guess in terms of my talk, so I wanted to set the scene a little bit from my brownfields beginnings in exploration, and then take you through the journey that I saw as how the day-to-day role of a field geologist developed over the years due to the technologies that were being implemented either in the field or more so in the analysis stage. So back in 2015, when I was fresh rig geologist, we had one geo looking after 1 or 2 RC rigs. We did quite a bit of detailed logging, different material types, how hard the rock was, what minerals we had, as well as the stratigraphy. And we did cross-section interpretation on big printed paper sections that were a meter and a half long, depending on how long your drill line was. And all of our downhole geophysics gamma logs, which are used quite extensively for the Pilbara stratigraphy, got printed out, glued on, and we'd hand draw our interpretations as the rig sort of moved down each drill line. At the time, I guess some of the technologies that were in trial and sort of just starting to take off were downhole assay tool. So this was being trialed to see if it could be used for QA/QC purposes instead of drilling so many diamond holes for QA/QC of our RC drilling, as well as hyperspectral data being collected at the lab. Over the next couple of years, we started, I guess, a lot of data was collected in the back end, which was used by the modelling geologists when they were doing their final geological and resource models. So we really looked at what data we needed to collect at the rig in the field to maximise the most out of our drill holes. And this saw a transition to our logging being simplified a little bit, as well as the beginning of what we called live field modelling. So this was a geological model, a very basic geological model in Leapfrog Geo that was updated daily from the drill holes that were drilled and logged the day prior. I guess in this early stage, we were still doing our paper sections for our interpretations that then was getting sort of pulled into the model. And an updated copy of the model was given to the rig geos each day to take out on their logging computer. I guess the processes that enabled this transition to start occurring was obviously the Leapfrog Geo software and the upskilling that came with that for the geos on site, as well as auto-syncing databases. So we're starting to get more automatic flows of data quicker to be able to do these processes. As everyone got, I guess, a bit more comfortable with the process, the live field modelling sort of took off a bit more, and we really put a big focus on interpreting and understanding what geology we were looking at. So there was a big focus on making sure we were ending the holes in the right place. So we're doing brownfields exploration. We have a relatively good understanding of we're in the right place. We just need to define exactly where our mineralization sits. So very different to the previous talks about your early stage exploration. So one of the important things, I guess, was making sure we ended those holes in the right place. All the other data that we got sort of after the fact would give us the information that we needed. But if you don't have the hole ending in the right spot and you miss something, you miss it all. So I guess as this progressed, the live field modeler would integrate the holes daily. They would check mineralization, stratigraphy, was there any potential structure? And it allowed the rig geologists time to think about and interpret the geology rather than just sitting there bashing chips day in, day out, and spending all of their time logging. Some of the technologies, I guess, that enable this more so in the in the back end for the geological modelers and the resource modelers at the end of the process was our downhole televiewer. So basically putting a camera down the hole, and it creates a picture tube. And from this, you can use software to pick and identify what direction, orientation, the jointing, the stratigraphy, and any potential structures are dipping. So you can use it to collect a lot of geotechnical data that you often wouldn't get from just logging RC chips. During this time as well, I guess the algorithms that were used for the hyperspectral data to pick the mineralogy of our samples was refined. So the more data you collect, the more you're able to refine your algorithms that help give you a useful output. In 2020, I changed companies. I went 50 Ks up the road, basically. So it was a different company. It was the same stratigraphy, similar deposits, but a very different logging style. I guess they collected data in quite a different way. They looked at different parameters of the stratigraphy, and they had, I guess, their model was one geo at the rig all day, bashing every single pile of RC chips that came out of the rig and logging in quite detail. Pretty much from the time I got there, there was talk of this wanting to transition to being able to unlock, time for the geos to look into interpreting data more and to not have them tied to the rig day in, day out. But this was quite challenging. This was not an easy transition, and it was because of the way the logging data was used by the business. So implementing new technology, bringing in different types of data, it's great. But there is a lot that goes on in the background to either remove some other kind of data, because if that's heavily relied on through multiple processes or through the whole value chain, then it's not just easy to switch it off and switch something new on. So there was a lot of, I guess, challenges to try and be able to transition the way that, I guess, the logging was done by the geos. They were working on algorithms to actually replicate the logging parameters that were logged by the geologists from the assays and the hyperspectral chip photos, and a few other things. And I guess I wasn't there to see the implementation of that because I left and I moved over to Brisbane. But before I left, we were working on what the day-to-day role of a field geologist would look like, so that all of that was ready for when the technology was good to go and the business was ready for that change. I guess I thought I'd just throw this in at the end. I know it's a little bit different. So we've been talking about technology and, things have changed quite a lot, I guess, just in the short time I've been working in the industry. But there's a few things that I've learned along the way that haven't changed. And particularly for, I guess, more and early stage exploration. But they are also, some of them are also applicable to your near mine or brownfields exploration. So I guess one thing is, if you are doing remote work, early stage exploration, probably one of the most reliable vehicles you can drive is a manual Land Cruiser. They are uncomfortable. The air conditioner is not great, but when you're in rough terrain, it's what you want to get you out of a pinch, because take it from someone who spent 2 hours digging a Hilux out of bull dust because the chassis got buried. It is not fun. I guess another thing that, you know, hasn't changed is the tools we use. So for early stage mapping, you know, your compass and your notebook are still two highly, highly valuable things. iPads and phones are great, but they haven't cracked how they deal with the heat. They quite often will overheat an hour into being in the sun. So yeah, if it's hot, if it's dusty, if it's wet, sometimes all you need is a compass and a notebook, or at least have them as a backup for when your tech does fail. And the final one is the power of observation. So keeping your eyes open, looking out for what's different, what doesn't look quite right, what doesn't fit, because quite often they're the things that you want to look at further and investigate a bit more. So yeah, that's all I've got. Thanks everyone.
That's all you've got. That's a lot. But I want to know, where was your G-pick out of those old trusty tools?
I don't have them on coal sites.
Oh, you would have had.
But you're right.
Yeah.
The GeoPick is
maybe you left
a
it on
very
out,
crucial tool.
Yeah.
Especially for bashing RC chips.
It's true. Oh, well, look, thank you. Thank you for bringing up the tale and finishing in style and reminding us that we are all just geologists, and to use our eyes, and those basic skills just never ever go away. And having just sent my whole team, or not my whole team, but a bunch of people, including Evan Marshall, who organises the webinars, on a full drive training trip. Go the trusty old Land Cruiser. It is definitely way better than the automatic new things that are around. Oh, does anybody have any questions for Jessie? It's a great story, I think, of just the evolution and even, seeing how things change. What else do you think has changed besides data and how we collect data?
Ooh. Rosters. Yes, that's one thing. Probably, rosters is one that I'd say has changed over time.
Yeah. Cultural sensitivity and Jenny's saying the rocks are all undercover, they're not outcropping.
Yeah, approvals is probably a big one too. Like there's been a big focus of like landholder engagements are probably taking a bit longer than they did a few years ago. So I know Claudia mentioned 200 agreements just to do one survey. Cool, I take my hat off to you. Can't imagine how much work that would be.
It's actually,
we've got a question.
We don't actually do that. It makes us change where we're going to explore.
It does. Ali in the Q&A has a question for you. He says, can you please explain more about the relationship between pain and technology?
Pain and technology. Ooh. I guess there's two ways that I guess I can talk to that. But there's technology is great, and you quite often have your technical teams working on all these great new things, but sometimes they don't consider how, I guess, the knock-on effects of the people on the you know, on the ground using them or implementing them, I guess how that sort of affects them. There's definitely been, like, I guess probably an increase in, there's definitely been an increase in data that's been collected, but if it adds an extra task to someone's role and then you add another one and another one, but you don't actually take anything away, then I guess that sort of, there's sort of, that's definitely one pain point. Is that answering your question, Ali, or is it am I going a bit sort of off what you're asking?
He won't be able to reply to you, but
Okay.
unless he puts it in the Q&A. So I think that's a good assessment.
I guess I'll just make one other point. So my husband would say I'm a person that hates technology. He's all technology and I'm anti-technology. But I guess something I realized when I changed companies was I actually do like technology when I get used to it. And I miss it when it's not there. So I guess I did find it quite challenging when I changed companies. I felt like I walked back in time about 8 years, just in the way that things were sort of done. So I guess there's, you know, hindsight's an amazing thing. And at the time when I was working with that technology, I didn't really appreciate sort of what it did until it wasn't there anymore. So yeah, sometimes people can be quite resistive to it, but once they get used to it, it's actually can be quite comfortable.
Yeah. And then the world falls apart when it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Leslie Wyborn has put, she can't access the chat, she says, so she's put a comment in the Q&A. She says, one change that she's seen in her lifetime is that women are actually in the field and employed by mineral companies, which is true. This did not happen until the 70s, and women also did not get underground until the 1980s. So I know Leslie has been part of a long change, and I think we actually have quite a young cohort of speakers here, but she's seen a lot more before that. And with that comment about being underground, a friend of mine, Alison Morley, who then introduced us to Jenny and brought her into the lineup of speakers. We went to uni together, and she's now head of something or other at Rio. One of her earlier jobs was working underground at Broken Hill, and I can remember her telling me stories of she had to wear a different set of overalls so that she could be, and had to let everybody know when she was going underground so that the men could modify their language and know that there was a lady underground instead of a man, and you know, and we're not that old.
They used to force white overalls, Helen.
Yes, white. I know, that was, which is a ridiculous colour for working underground. Anyway, look, I think now let's put everybody, take yourself off mute, and we can, and if you would stop sharing so that I can't see a giant version of myself. Thanks, Jessie. We can have a bit of a chat, and Nick, do you want to promote whoever's left to be a panelist, and we can have a bit of a chat. People can ask questions. Leslie can talk to us about some of her experiences, which would be great. But I'd also like to hear from some of the other panelists, their reflections on other talks that they've heard today, because I know for myself, I do feel strongly about female representation in the resources sector, and it's been like I've had tears in my eyes today, just bursting with pride, you know, out of just seeing all of you I think it's just so fantastic. So thank you for agreeing to be part of our session today. And I think it was really great as well, just to have stories of exploration or career pathways or just perspectives on the resources sector more generally. As BAU, you know, we're not sitting there going, oh, it's really hard to be a woman in mining or anything. It's just a conversation about this, you know, we're all professional women and we're out there working and doing really cool stuff. And, you know, Jenny went and discovered one of the biggest deposits in Australia for ages, and Claudia's got gold nuggets falling around everywhere, and you know, it's just also cool. Jess Keast is and Holly, both our social media and geoscience communication superstars. So I love all of the stuff that we've seen today, and I really appreciate you all being part of it. So I want to say a huge thank you from me. And Leslie is also talking in the chat saying it was brilliant seeing what all the wonderful next generation are getting up to. So thank you. And she's also saying that in government, we weren't paid overtime as women because it was felt we would struggle to do a day's work and would not be able to work outside of 9 to 5 in the field. Well, I just can't even believe that, Leslie. So that's a bit incredible. And, you know, some of the things that we just take for granted are so strange, you know, and such a big change for that older generation who have seen so much more change. Somebody has also said that the youth of the panel is a huge encouragement for the future. So brilliant talks, and I completely agree. Oh, far out chat coming everywhere. And if you've now been promoted to a panelist, please take your mute off and just start talking. Karen Gardner is saying, great webinar, lots of great content and presented with a lot of passion, and great to see so many young, enthusiastic and talented women. So thank you, everybody. Absolutely agree. And I want to say a huge kudos as well to Evan, who works behind the scenes tirelessly, bringing everybody together. So thank you. And this is our last one for the year. I'm going to stop talking. Somebody else have a go. Nick, you're meant to be the co-presenter.
Yes, so just on behalf of Rick and our friends at GSQ, thanks so much for joining us during the year, and thanks so much for today. It's been brilliant, and we look forward to doing the same again next year.
Definitely. Maybe we should have some collaborative GeoHug ones as well.
Yeah.
Leverage off Jess's fame.
I think we need one on the cover problem. Everyone put their heads together.
Oh, let's do. We have actually done cover ones.
Yeah,
we have done cover ones. Maybe we can revisit that. You're going to star in that one as well, Jenny.
We can do till. Yeah, we can add till to it.
Soon.
Yes. Oh. Who else have we? Only Ali has accepted our invitation to be a panelist. So
have I?
Maybe you did it wrong.
I thought I allowed everybody to talk. Let's see. Promote to panelist.
You've got to actually promote to panelist, yeah, and then they've got to accept it.
Okay.
All right. Well.
Ollie, I'm getting lots of internal comments from Rio on my chat here about how fantastic your talk was and how inspirational it was.
Yeah,
that's lovely. I really meant it when Jess, when you put up your imposter sort of syndrome gifs, I was cracking it because it's kind of sad to admit, but it's such a natural feeling to feel inadequate, and because I've obviously like checked you guys out before the talk, and I was just like, oh my god, what am I doing here? These women are so cool, and so that's nice. But I definitely you learn a lot more from these kinds of experiences than I loved my degree, but you learn a lot more from this kind of setting than really anything that you can be taught. So I learned heaps today. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Well, we learned a lot from you too, so thanks for being part of it. keep telling stories. And we all know that some of the challenges that we're facing as an industry now are not so much technical, but more the communication piece and convincing the community that what we do is valuable and essential to all the environmental goals that everybody wants to achieve. So we need people like you, Holly, to tell those stories. And
it's a fine line though, isn't it? Because you don't you want to have the background, like you want to be able to understand the science in a way that when you talk, you're not just full of it. And then what's been funny is there's always academic old timers who are just like total custodians of the knowledge, but you can't take that into your communication. You have to strip away some bits, and so it's kind of funny watching tension between what details you choose to include, how you simplify things. I know it frustrates some people, so that's why I was like, this might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it is a skill, and not everyone likes that way of talking, but we're all learning.
You're very lucky in South Australia that the Flinders in particular are such a good teaching set of rocks. I mean, I come from New Zealand, which is also lucky in terms of having something that's obvious sticking out of the ground. But I have to say, if you're at Winu, there's not much you can do except look at the red dirt.
Oh, there are those cool sand dunes.
The sand dunes are spectacular, yeah. But
I think the comment that you made, Holly, about approaching it in a different way, not just going to classrooms filled with year 9s and sort of younger students, is really interesting, because I've been doing literally on Tuesday, I went and saw a classroom filled with hundreds of people, but I have no idea about the impact that I had, and whether I've actually had the same thoughts of, should I be posting things on social media to get to a wider audience? But my question is, how on earth do you not get sucked into a social media hole? I have blocked Instagram because I cannot help just I'd love to post things, but I get too distracted.
No, that's so legitimate, and it's hilarious. I'm like I said, I'm quite close with my sister Ginger. She's 17, and she's my biggest fan and harshest critic, as younger siblings are. And I say to her, I actually hate the idea of social media. I've tried to refuse to get a TikTok, and Instagram scares the life out of me, the way the algorithms work, and like this whole idea of well-being and social media, for me, it doesn't. I'll be the first to admit it doesn't sit well with me, but I've had to reconcile that with that's how information goes around these days, like it or not, good or bad. I think probably bad, but that's where it is. And so I struggle with it. I go through phases of not posting for months because I'm busy, or because I'm taking a moral stance against Zuckerberg, and then other times I just am surprised at the engagement. Like I haven't figured it out. I have not figured it out. If you guys do, let me know.
Did you do the practical geocommunication course through Richard Lilly and Nexus?
I'm about halfway through. I started it and then sort of accidentally put it down. It is awesome.
Okay. Because they actually have a segment on like social media and the impact of each platform and how much attention it gathers. So if you haven't finished it, there's actually a section that might be extremely useful to you.
That's brilliant. Ooh.
So good.
What's your perspective, Jess?
Well, yeah, it was funny. I went to a TikTok business event on Tuesday, and it was like, someone that works for APAC for TikTok came in to talk to a bunch of people here in Sydney, and it was like really interesting learning about how they were all using it and like all the trends and everything like that. But it was crazy. So they're talking that because there's so much content out there, it was starting to get down to about, you have 7 seconds to entice someone into your content. It's now 2 seconds.
Really?
The other part is the more simple, the better, of like, don't overcomplicate it, make it silly. And with TikTok in particular, like with a lot of other platforms, you're there to like follow your friends, and it's all about the social side. TikTok's not social, it's entertainment only. And they go there for like to improve their well-being It's all, they want a positive entertainment is what they're doing. But yeah, it was pretty mind-blowing that it's like you've got 2 seconds to get them.
Yeah. I'm sure chalcopyrite improves your well-being.
So Celeste, you've got your hand. Celeste, do you want to jump in?
Sorry, I'm a little bit backwards from where you guys are up to at the moment. It was about the message about mining and the positive side of it, as opposed to at the moment. Sorry, not at the moment. My children are probably the age of most of the panelists, and when they were going through school, a lot of the curriculum was based towards the environmental side and the impacts, rather than a balance on both sides. And I had to point out to my kids, you know, have a look around our house. All of this is paid for by mining, you know. Yeah, and so I was really pleased when I heard Holly say that she actually went in there and started telling people. I've been to CQU Uni when we've lent them core, and quite a lot of the people who were in there were doing their environmental side, and so some of the questions that were coming were very skewed one way. So luckily, because I had worked in industry, I was able to sort of try and fend them back to give them a bit more of a perspective. But it's very hard when it's all coming through that way. Anyway, I'll stop.
I do really think it is a perception. And having grown up in Melbourne, as you said, people get educated on the environmental side very, very early on. And I can say from my personal experience, I did that student geology gig just to put it on my resume. I never thought that I'd love it. I never thought that it would be the job for me. I genuinely had this really negative perception, and I still do, even towards coal mining. I'm still like, oh, you know, like it's not that good for the environment. Like some of my friends call me a green miner, because I've got this environmental mindset and I'm in mining, and it's really hard for me to reconcile my moral values in that space. So definitely.
You know what's really
sorry,
you
when
and
I
me
was working, sorry, when I was working with Alcoa over in Western Australia in Bauxite, one of my best friends there was the environmental scientist, and I said, you know, how come you're in mining? And she said, that's where I can do the most good. So yeah, you can be both.
Yeah. Yep. I'm trying.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see. I suppose it's fascinating to see the inefficient use of resources. So Claudia, as you drive north of Melbourne, I would say the spread of brick venereal disease across the landscape is far worse than anything that we're doing. But trying to have that conversation in a balanced way is actually quite difficult. So yeah, it's intriguing. And I mean, I was on with Southern Cross Gold there, so we're closer to Melbourne as well. So
excellent.
And very similar to your system. So fascinating. So, thank you.
I've met both Lisa and Angela this year, so big fans of them both.
Cool. Well, I believe it or not, I taught one of your resource geologists there, and Ashley Jackson.
Oh, excellent. I do know Ash Jackson. He's a good egg.
I feel like Jessie needs to write a reply too, since she's working in the coal industry at the moment now as well.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw the coal industry under the bus. It's just really interesting about the perception in Melbourne about the coal industry. And yeah, obviously you can tell me more about your job.
Well, I guess so. Like, it was something that I sort of ummed and ahed about before I took this job, but I guess BMA or BHP coal mine some of the highest grade metallurgical coal in the world, and without that coal, currently we can't make steel. So there is, I guess we need it. Unfortunately, it's one of those things.
But the thing is, that's
coal is required for iron ore, you know, as much as iron ore is for steel. But then I guess the thing I struggle with as well is we all want, you know, this transition to renewables, to electric cars, to everything. And we need the lithium, we need the copper, we need all the other metals to produce those. But how are most of those electric batteries getting charged currently? There's still a lot of like demand for coal-fired power. and it's a problem. Like, I think it's not necessarily the how we're getting the power, it's the amount of consumption, like it's the rate. You know, everybody can do their little bit to help, but until we have a sustainable, I guess, viable solution, it's going to be something that everybody fights over and argues about. And there will be, you know, moral conflicts, something I struggle with. But I do what I can for the environment. I work in coal mining, but I have, you know, a big solar system on my roof. I compost as much, and I drive my husband crazy by splitting all of our waste into as many different avenues as possible so that I reduce my little impact, the thing I can control.
We're all responsible for ourselves ultimately. And in BMA's favour, I heard the other day through some of the work that we're doing at the GSQ that they're working with a circular economy consultancy to become a fully circular business and to help model how mining can become the mining operation, not so much the extraction of resources, because that's linear, not circular, but how the actual operation can become circular. So, you know, we can't, it's not black and white, and we can't just paint it all as this is good and this is bad.
Yeah.
Now, you guys can continue, but I actually have to go catch a plane. So